Get comfortable. Dim the lamp if you can. Tonight we're going upstairs in a house that looks from the street as if nothing in it has ever been out of place. Past the drawing room, past the first landing where the carpet is still thick, past the second where it thins, all the way to a door that stays shut for most of the day and for most of the night as well. You already have a picture of the Victorian Nanny, nearly everyone does. Apple cheeks, a white cap, a starched bib, a kind, slightly comic figure at the edge of a family portrait, holding a baby who will later be described as having been raised by its parents. Background furniture in a rich house. Someone who is present in the way a clock is present. Useful, unexamined. Not quite a person with a day of her own. That is not who you are about to become tonight. The real post starts before the kitchen range is fully lit. It starts in the dark, in wool, with a box of matches and a grate that has gone cold. It holds a kind of knowledge the drawing room never receives and would not know how to file if it did. You will keep that knowledge. You will carry it up the back stairs and down again for years. You will edit it before it leaves your mouth, and you will not be the one to say what it has cost you or what it has made of these children. If this sort of evening suits you, you might subscribe or leave a comment with the hour where you are and the place. I like knowing who is still awake and from how far off. Let the room go soft and let us go back. It is 1886. The place is Kensington, a tall stucco house on a square that has been swept and will be swept again by mid-morning. From the pavement, the house presents a clean face, white steps, black railings, a fanlight that will take the first grey of dawn in a few hours and make nothing dramatic of it. Inside, the night nursery is still dark. Last night's coal smell hangs in the grate, faint and dry, more dust than heat. The window is a black rectangle with a catch you checked before you lay down. Somewhere 4 floors below you, the kitchen is not yet a place of warmth. The range has been banked. The cook is still in her bed. The house, for this thin stretch of time, belongs to the people who will be first on their feet, and you are one of them. You are the head nurse, early 30s. 4 years in this post, which is long enough for a house to stop introducing you and short enough that no one has begun to speak of you as a fixture. 3 children sleep on the other side of a connecting door. 1 nursery maid sleeps above you in an attic bed narrower than yours, under a slope of ceiling that collects the weather. The father of the house is a barrister of some standing. He leaves in the mornings with a case in his head and returns with the same case or another. The mother receives in the afternoons and writes a great many notes on paper so thin the light shows through. Neither of them will be awake for some time. Neither of them has ever been awake at the hour you keep. Your room is the small one off the night nursery. A bed, a press, a washstand with a crack in the basin that you have learned not to see. There is a glass, but it is a poor one, spotted at the edge, and you pin your hair without it more often than with it. The boards are cold. They will still be cold when you put your feet to them. The connecting door is the true furniture of this floor. Closed, it makes 2 rooms of one life. Open, it makes you responsible for every sound on the other side. You know the weight of that door in your hand, the way you know the weight of a child who has gone slack with sleep. This is the first thing most people get wrong, and it is worth having it said before the day begins, while the house is still honest. The parents believe they are raising these children. They will say so at dinner. They will say so in letters. They will say so later in the brief, proud sentences that follow a child into a room full of adults. The daily labor of that belief is yours. The speech, the sleep, the manners, the small courage, the taste for one pudding over another, the fear that lives under a particular blanket and will not live under a different one. All of that is made, hour by hour on this floor, by your hands and your voice, and the rules you invented because no one else was here to invent them. You will not be the one to say so. Saying so is not in the post. The post is to make the belief look natural. A nanny, in the popular account, is a comfort, a soft authority, a woman who loves other people's children because that is her nature, the way a kettle boils because that is its nature. The account is tidy, and it is wrong in the way tidy accounts are often wrong. You do love them. That part is not a fiction, and it would be a thinner night if we pretended otherwise. Love is not the whole of the work, and it is not what the house is paying for. The house is paying for continuity, for a floor that runs when the rest of the house is still a theory. For 3 children who will come down at 5 o'clock, washed, buttoned, and able to offer 2 polite sentences if spoken to. For the closed door itself, which lets the drawing room remain a drawing room. You live in a household inside the household. Your authority covers 1 maid and 3 children and stops at the stair. Below that stair, the housekeeper holds the keys, and the cook holds the heat, and the butler, when there is a dinner, holds the front of the house. Above it, for most of the day, there is you. The parents cross that border at appointed hours, in appointed clothes, for a ritual the manuals call the children's hour, and the house treats as a kind of visiting. What happens between those visits is not their subject. It is yours. The closed door is not a piece of carpentry. It is a social fact. It keeps the noise of childhood from the rooms where childhood is discussed as an idea. The year matters. 1886 is not a fairy tale date. It is a working year in a working capital. Kensington is not Mayfair, and it is not the East End. It is a district of tall houses and professional men, of squares that look alike until you know which one pays its books on time. A barrister of some standing keeps a house like this because a house like this is part of how standing is kept. The children are part of that same surface. They must be seen on certain afternoons, in certain coats, in Kensington Gardens, walking in a line that reflects well on the address. They must not be seen in the state you will find them in at 5:45, warm and rumpled and entirely themselves. Your work is the conversion of one state into the other, daily, without leaving a mark that looks like work. You have been doing the conversion for 4 years. Before this house, there was another. And before that, a training that was less a school than a long apprenticeship in other women's nurseries. You came up the back stairs of those houses the way you come up these, with a box and a character and a pair of boots that had to last. You learned which mothers wished to be informed and which mothers wished only to be reassured. You learned that those are not the same request. You learned how much of a child's day can be made invisible if the report at 5 o'clock is framed as weather. Fine day. Good walk. The little one ate. All well. All well is a sentence with a great deal folded inside it. You will use it later. You have used it for 4 years. It is not a lie. It is a compression. The drawing room has no shelf for the uncompressed version. Listen for a moment to what the house sounds like at this hour. Almost nothing. A settling in the flues. A cart a long way off, iron on stone, already about the business of a city that does not wait for nurseries. The youngest turns once, and the bedstead gives a small wooden complaint, and then is quiet. You know that sound. You know the middle child's breathing, which is deeper, and the eldest's, which is nearly a grown person's now, measured and private. You know, without seeing, how the night nursery is arranged. 2 beds and a cot, a screen, a chair you sit in when a cough starts, the fireguard standing like a low fence around a grate that has gone out. In the morning, you will light that fire before a child opens an eye. You will do it in the dark or in the grey that is not yet light, and the first warmth in this part of the house will be yours. That is the scale of the post, not the cap, not the storybook cheek. A full hour of labour before the people you are paid to raise have begun their day, and another stretch after they have been put back into the dark. And between those 2 edges a long, ordinary, highly skilled continuity that the house will describe, if it describes it at all, as if the children had simply turned out well. You are not furniture. You are the reason the furniture of this floor works. The basins, the button hooks, the low table, the slate, the perambulator in the passage, the press where the wool is kept, the account book with its careful columns. None of those objects raises a child. You do. And because you do it well, the objects will be what visitors notice. A tidy nursery, such pretty manners. How fortunate to have help. Help is a word that does a great deal of hiding. You're not help in the sense the kitchen is help, and you are not family in the sense the drawing room is family. You eat apart from both more often than with either. Downstairs will not fully claim you. Upstairs never will. The closed door is your country. Inside it you hold a map no one else has drawn. Which stocking seam rubs. Which child will fight a particular frock. Which hairbrush they will tolerate. Which fear is real and which is a performance that wants only to be heard. The mother has never asked for that map. You have never offered it. Offering it would require the house to admit that the raising is happening here, in the dark, in print and wool, on a top floor that smells faintly of coal, and not in the rooms with the better carpet. So you keep it. That is the bargain, though no one wrote it down. You keep the map. You keep the hour before anyone stirs. You keep the knowledge that will not cross a drawing room carpet. In return, the house gives you a wage, a bed, your place at the edge of the portrait, and the long, uncredited satisfaction of children who will go down at 5 o'clock, looking as if they had always been this way. The night is thin now, not morning yet. The grate is cold. The door is closed. In a little while you will put your feet to the boards and begin, and the house will go on believing what it needs to believe. That is enough to start with. The rest of the day will fill itself the way these days always do, one necessary thing after another, none of them small, except from downstairs. You put your feet to the boards while the night is still the larger part of the hour. The room off the night nursery is barely a room. A narrow bed, a washstand the size of a tea tray, a chair with your day clothes laid over the back in the order you will need them, because searching in the dark wastes minutes you do not have. The window is a dark square. Kensington beyond it is roofs and a faint leftover of last night's fires. It is not yet 6. It is nearer 5:30. The hour you have kept for 4 years in this house, and longer than that in the last. The boards are cold. They are always cold. Through the connecting door, the night nursery holds the particular quiet of children who have not yet decided to be awake. 3 of them. The youngest nearest the hearth, the middle one against the wall, the eldest in the smaller bed by the window, because she asked for it last winter and you never took the arrangement back. You dress without a light. There is a looking glass if you insist on the name. A scrap of silvered glass, no larger than a hymn book, hung too high for sitting and too spotted to be of much use. You pin your hair by feel. The pins live in a saucer on the washstand. You know how many. You know which ones bend. The weekday dress first, dark print over wool, because the top floor does not hold heat the way the rooms below do. Stays you can fasten yourself. Stockings. The boots you set beside the bed last night so your hands would not have to hunt. Apron last, the large working one, not the cleaner one you will put on later if anyone from downstairs comes up. No one will come up, not at this hour. You go through in your stockinged feet first, only to listen. 3 kinds of breathing. All of them even. The fire is dead. You knew it would be. You banked it last night the way you always bank it, and it has gone out the way it always goes out by 5:30 in a room this high and this poorly sealed. The grate is a black mouth. The guard stands in front of it like a small iron fence around nothing. This is the first work. Always the first work. You kneel, kindling in the box to the left of the hearth where you put it, where the nursery maid will not remember to put it if the job is left to her. Newspaper twisted into spills, dry sticks, a few lumps of coal no larger than a child's fist, because a nursery fire is not meant to roar. It is meant to take the edge off the air and to bring the water along later. Matches from the tin on the mantel. You strike one. The sulphur smell is sharp and brief. The paper catches. You wait. You do not leave a fire you have just lit. That is a rule older than this house and older than the last one, and it did not come from any mother, because no mother of this class has ever given you advice about a grate at 5:30. They do not think about fires at 5:30. The flame takes the sticks. You add coal. You set the guard. The metal is cold enough to sting. You wipe your fingers on the apron and stand. Now the water. The cans live on the landing. 2 of them, zinc, dented along the rims. The larger one holding enough for the first basins if you are careful with the pouring. The back stairs are dark. You know the number of steps. You know the one that complains. You go down without a candle because a candle for this trip is a waste, and because your hands will be full on the way up. The kitchen range will not be fully lit. The cook's girl, if she is already at the clinker, will not thank you for appearing in the doorway with empty cans and a look that means you expect something. You fill them at the scullery tap if the boiler has anything left in it. This morning there is water. Not hot, not quite cold. Better than some mornings. You carry both cans up. The weight sits in your shoulders and in the turn of the stair, the same turn every day, the one that wants you to set a can down and never wins, because setting it down only means lifting it again, and that is worse. Back in the night nursery, the fire has a small, honest heat. You set one can on the hob, not too close. You set the other on the hearth where a waking foot will not find it. You look at the beds again, still sleeping. The eldest has one arm out. You tuck it. You do this without deciding to do it, the way you find the pins in the dark. Here is something easy to misunderstand about a house like this. When the parents speak of the household, they mean the whole of it. The cook, the housemaids, the parlour maid, the man who comes for the boots, the woman who comes for the washing, you, the nursery maid, the children. One establishment, one set of accounts, one front door on a Kensington street of tall stucco houses that look, from the pavement, as if they were a single house repeated. They are not. The top floor runs as a household inside the household. It has its own fire, its own water, its own meals sent up on trays, its own clock, its own rules, its own small economy of soap and flannel, and the last of the milk. Your authority covers 1 maid and 3 children. It is real authority. You train, you correct. You decide when a child is well enough to go down, and when a child will stay up here with a sentence about a slight cold that is not quite a lie. You keep the nursery books, you order from the kitchen, you send back what will not do, and it stops at the stair. Below the last nursery step, you are a servant again, and not even the kind of servant the kitchen quite knows how to place. The housekeeper has the linen and the stores and the girls. The cook has the range and the tradesman at the area door. You have the children. The children are not stores. The children are not a department. The children are the reason the house exists in the form it does, and yet the work of them has been put on a floor. The rest of the house visits by appointment. Your word is law until the landing. After that, it is a request, and a request can be delayed, forgotten, or answered with a look that says the nursery wants too much. You have learned the length of that stair the way other women learn a street. They walk every day. You know what you can carry down it as a fact and what you must carry as a suggestion. You know which complaints die if you voice them beside the range and which ones you must never voice at all, because voicing them would mean the drawing room heard that the top floor was not running itself. A step on the attic stairs. Soft. The nursery maid. She is 16. She has been in this house 11 months. Before that, a place in Bayswater she does not describe, except to say the children were older and the nurse was harder. She sleeps under the eaves in a partitioned end of the attic, sloped ceiling, a window the size of a ledger. In winter, the water in her jug skins over. You have seen it. You have not mentioned it. Mentioning it would not change the attic. She comes in already dressed, or nearly. Print, apron. Hair put up in the dark the same way yours was, only less securely, because she is still learning how many pins a day requires. Her face has the look of a person who has been awake for 10 minutes and would like 10 more. You do not give her 10 more. You never have. The kindness, if it is kindness, is that you do not raise your voice to say so. You set her first tasks in a tone that will not carry through the night nursery door and would not carry down the stair, even if the door stood open. The slops. The chamber pots emptied and rinsed before any child stirs, because a child waking to that particular smell starts the morning already wrong. Fresh water in the ewer. The day nursery grate if she has not laid it, which she will not have because she never has without being told. Last night's damp flannels onto the guard to dry. Slippers set out. The high chair wiped. Small things. The sort of list that sounds like nothing when you say it quickly and takes 20 minutes when it is done properly. She nods. She is not a stupid girl. She is a tired one, which is not the same, and you remember being 16 in someone else's attic well enough not to confuse the two. You watch her take the first pot through to the landing and you listen for the carefulness of her step. Careful is what you need. Noise is what you cannot have. The children will wake soon enough. The parents, 2 floors below, will wake when they wake, which is not soon. That will be after hot water has been carried to their own rooms by a housemaid who has her own grate to light and her own stairs to climb, and who does not think of you when she does it. Be plain about what they will sleep through. They will sleep through the cold grate. They will sleep through the match and the paper and the first thin smoke that this chimney does not always take kindly. They will sleep through 2 zinc cans and the turn of the stair and the weight in your shoulders. They will sleep through the nursery maid's feet on the attic boards and the rinse of the pots and the setting of the guard and the small return of a blanket over an arm that had found its way out. They will sleep through a full hour of work, complete and necessary, done first in the dark and then in the first grey, before any child of theirs has opened an eye. Much later they will come to their own breakfast in rooms that have been warm for some time, and they will ask, if they ask at all, whether the children slept well. You will say yes, or you will say the youngest was a little restless, which is a sentence that covers a great deal and reveals nothing. You will not say that you were up before the kitchen range was fully lit. You will not say the fire had gone out. You will not say the water was not hot. You will not say the girl's hair was already coming down. None of that is a report. A report is about the children. The children are still asleep. Therefore, as far as the house is concerned, nothing has happened yet. You know otherwise. The hour has already happened. It has happened every morning of the 4 years you have held this post, and it happened in the posts before this one, other top floors, other grates, other cans. It is the part of the work that looks from below like the absence of work. The nursery is quiet. The children have not called. The nurse must still be in bed. That is the story the silence tells, and silence is a kind of furniture in a house like this. People sit in it without examining the joints. The fire is drawing now. You can hear it, a low, regular sound, more like breathing than like burning. The can on the hob has begun to tick as the metal warms. Outside, the street is still mostly dark. A cart somewhere, a door, the particular hush of a road that will be busy in 2 hours and is not busy yet. You stand for a moment with your hands on the guard, feeling the first real heat come through the iron, and you look at the 3 beds. Soon you will wake the eldest, then the middle one, then the youngest, who takes longer and who will want to be held for a minute before the basin. You will hold her. You will not count it as extra because it is not extra. It is the work. It is all the work, including the minute that looks like affection and is affection, and is also the thing that keeps the morning from tipping into tears before the dressing has even begun. But not yet. For another few minutes, the night nursery is still a sleeping room. The maid is on the landing. The water is coming up. The fire is yours. The door is closed. The house below you is a stack of dark floors and people who have not yet put their own feet to their own boards. You have already begun. They have not. That difference is the whole of the post if you had to put it in one fact, and you would not put it in one fact, because no one has asked, and because the asking would be more awkward than the quiet. You take the second can through to the day nursery and set it down. The day nursery is colder. It always is, first thing. The windows are larger. That fire is the girl's job this morning, and you will look at it when she has laid it, and you will not relight it yourself unless she has made a mess of the paper, which she did for the first 3 months, and does not do now. Progress of a kind. The sort that never appears in anyone's letter of character except as the general remark that the girl is willing. Willing is a word houses like. It costs them nothing, and it covers a great deal of early rising. You go back. You wash your own face in an inch of water that is not yet warm, because if you wait for warm, you will still be waiting when the eldest sits up. The flannel is rough. The soap is the nursery soap, yellow, the same you will use on them. You dry on the thinner towel, the one that is yours, hung on the rail at the end of your bed. You put on the indoor shoes. You catch the pin that has been working itself loose since you stood up. You look once at the useless glass and see enough of a head and a collar to know you will pass. 5:30 has gone. 6 is coming. The children will wake on their own if you leave them another quarter of an hour. The eldest first, always the eldest first, with that particular sound she makes that is not quite a word. You would rather wake them yourself. Waking them yourself means the morning starts on your terms. Their terms include calling out, and calling out carries, and carrying is what you spend this first hour preventing. You stand in the connecting doorway, and you listen to the fire and the cans and the maid on the stairs and the 3 kinds of breathing, and you let the last of the dark sit on the room the way a coverlet sits, useful, temporary, already on its way off. Then you go to the eldest's bed and put your hand on the covers, not shaking, only present the way you always do, and the day the drawing room will later describe as beginning at breakfast starts in earnest, in wool and dark print, on a top floor that still smells of the match you struck when no one was awake to see it. You put your hand on the covers and wait. The eldest knows this wait. She does not startle. She turns her face toward what is left of the dark and makes the sound that is almost a word. And then she is awake, properly, the way a child of 8 can be awake in a single breath if the morning has always begun like this. You do not speak yet. Speaking too soon makes her talk, and talking before the washstand makes the middle one sit up too early, and the middle one sitting up too early wakes the youngest, and the youngest waking before you are ready for her is a noise that travels down the well of the stair. The covers come back. The night air of the room is not as cold as it was an hour ago. The fire has done that much. You take her by the shoulders and sit her up, and her hair, which you plaited last night, has come half undone in the usual place, just behind the left ear. You already knew it would. You knew it when you put the ribbon in. The basin is waiting. You poured it when the first can came up. It is not warm. Warmth is for later, for the drawing room, for people who wash after the range has been going for hours. Nursery water in this first stretch is a degree above the room and no more. You wring the flannel and wash her face, her neck, her ears, the backs of her hands, in the order you have used since the week you arrived. She holds still because holding still is a thing you taught her before she could read. The soap is the same yellow cake. The towel is the children's towel, thicker than yours, marked with the small cross-stitch in the corner that the laundry uses to keep the floors from mixing their linen. You move to the middle child's bed, while the eldest sits on the edge of hers with the towel in her lap, which is the next part of the order. The middle one is heavier in sleep, 5 years old and built like someone who will always need an extra minute. Your hand goes on the covers the same way, present, not shaking, and you wait through the longer return. When the eyes open, you already have the second flannel ready. The basin for this one is the smaller one because the middle child still tips a full basin if you give it, and a wet nightshirt at this hour is a delay you will not accept. The youngest is last. Always last. Because last means you can give her the 2 minutes she needs to arrive in the day without the others using those 2 minutes to undo what you have just finished. She is 3. She does not sit up on her own. You lift her. She is warm in the way only a small child is warm, a heat that has nothing to do with the grate. You wash her at your knee, which is faster than the washstand and quieter. Her flannel is the softest of the three. That is not favoritism. That is the flannel that will not make her cry. And crying at this hour is a sound the landing remembers. The nursery maid is at the connecting door with the third can. You take it without looking up and set it on the hearth to hold what heat it has. She knows to strip the eldest's bed now while the child is off it, and to fold the nightgown as she takes it, not later, not in a heap. You do not repeat this. You gave it 4 years ago to a different girl, and last year to this one, and if you have to give it again, the fault will not be in the instruction. Combinations go on first. Merino wool, the winter weight, still, because a Kensington top floor has not yet decided to let the season change. The eldest steps into hers. You work the buttons. There are more of them than a person who has never dressed a child of this class would guess. Combinations close at the front, a long row, small, bone or pearl, the kind that slip if the fingers are cold. Yours are not cold. They have been at this since the fire. Then the Liberty bodice, not stays, not anything the drawing room would recognize as a corset. A knitted wool bodice with buttons at the waist for the stocking suspenders, and the suspenders themselves, two to a side, hanging ready. You fasten them. You draw on the stockings, left then right, seam to the back, and you check the seam with a thumb because a twisted seam will be a limp by the park, and a limp in Kensington Gardens is a remark you will hear from another nurse on a bench, not from the mother who will not be there to see it. Flannel petticoat, white petticoat over it. The frock, the everyday one, navy wool with the braid at the hem that you mended on Tuesday. The Sunday collar stays in the press. You will not touch it this morning. Pinafore over the frock. Then the boots. The boots are the part that takes the time. Button boots, the leather still stiff from yesterday's walk. 8 buttons a side, 16 the pair, and the button hook hangs on a ribbon at your waist, because a hook left on a washstand is a hook the youngest will have in her mouth before you turn around. You sit on the low chair. The eldest stands between your knees and holds your shoulder, which is the arrangement you settled on in the first month, and you work the hook through each loop and catch each button and draw it through. You do not hurry the last 2. Hurrying the last 2 pulls the leather, and then the boot rubs, and a rub is a blister, and a blister is a child who will not walk the length of the broad walk without being carried. And you will not carry an 8-year-old through Kensington Gardens in front of the other nurses. The middle child is in combinations now, the nursery maid doing the buttons under your eye. You take over for the bodice. The middle one will fight the left suspender if you let the maid do it, not because the maid is clumsy, but because the middle one has decided, for reasons that belong only to this room, that the left suspender is yours. The youngest is still against your knee for the lower half. Combinations, a shorter bodice, socks rather than long stockings, the soft boots that lace, which is quicker, which is why you put her last, and also why you can afford to. A frock that buttons at the back. You do the back buttons by feel. Here is something easy to misunderstand about the length of this hour. It is not slowness. It is not 3 children being difficult, though they can be. It is the clothes. A child of this class, in this year, does not put on a dress and go downstairs. What you are assembling is a system of layers, each one doing a job the one outside it cannot do, and the jobs are warmth, decency, and the look of a household that can afford both. The combinations replace the old separate vest and drawers. They have been common in nurseries for a decade now, cut in merino or in cotton for summer, high at the neck, long in the leg, a garment meant to be invisible and, in practice, the one you handle most. Over that, for a girl, the Liberty bodice. The name is newer than the idea. It is a soft, buttoned, sleeveless thing, wool or stockinette, and it exists so that stockings can hang from it instead of being tied with garters that leave a mark. The suspenders button on. They twist. They come undone at the park if you have not checked the buttons twice. You check them twice. The petticoats are not decoration. The flannel one is warmth. It is cut full, often from a length you have seen in the linen cupboard in 2 widths, and it sits under everything like a second room the child carries around. The white one is the layer that shows if a hem lifts in a wind, and so it has to be white, and so it has to be replaced when it is not, and so it is one of the items you watch in the wash with more attention than the mother will ever spend on it. The frock goes over. Everyday frocks in this nursery are wool, dark, made to take a fall on gravel and a breakfast of porridge. The Sunday things hang separately. Collars, the finer frocks, the sashes that will be wanted at 5 o'clock, all of that waits. The pinafore covers the frock because covering the frock is how a frock lasts the year. And a frock that lasts the year is a line in the nursery accounts that does not have to be explained. Boots are leather, buttoned for the 2 elder ones, and they are made on lasts that do not quite match these particular feet, because boots are bought to last through a growth, and a growth is not a shape a last can predict. That is why you keep the hook, and why you keep the extra pair of wool socks in the bottom of the press, and why you know, without looking, which boot will need the button eased with a drop of water if the leather has gone stiff overnight. The weight of it, all told, on a child of 8, is more than people who have only ever dressed themselves in a later century will picture. Merino, flannel, wool frock, leather, not a costume, a climate the child walks around inside. Dressing one child through this sequence, if nothing fights you, is a quarter of an hour. Dressing 3, with a maid who is still learning the middle one's left suspender, with a youngest who has not decided she is awake, with a seam that needs turning and a button that has come off in the night and is waiting in the saucer on the mantel where you put stray buttons so they do not go down the grate, is the better part of an hour. The drawing room will not count this hour. The drawing room does not know this hour exists. You keep a map of these 3 bodies that has never been drawn on paper. The eldest will tolerate the ivory-backed brush and will not tolerate the wooden one. The wooden one pulls. You found this out on a Thursday in your 2nd month, and you have not picked up the wooden one for her since. The middle child will wear the grey merino stockings without comment and will go stiff as a post if you put on the ribbed pair, because the ribbed pair has a seam that sits wrong on the right heel, and the right heel is the one that blistered last October on the long way home from the gardens, and the body remembers what the mouth has not yet got the words for. The youngest will fight the blue frock, not the wool, the colour. You have turned the question over on quiet evenings and come up with nothing that would satisfy a person who wanted a reason. The blue frock goes on anyway on the days it is the clean one, and you allow the fight 2 minutes and then it is over. And you do not mention the fight when you take them down at 5, because a fight over a colour is not a thing the mother has a use for. The eldest's left stocking wants an extra twist at the suspender, or it works down by mid-morning. The middle one will not have a hair ribbon tied on the right side. The youngest needs the 2nd button of the combinations left easier than the rest, or she pulls at her neck until the whole row comes open. The hairbrush the middle child will sit for is the one with the paler bristles. The other one, the one that came in a Christmas box from an aunt, is too stiff, and using it is a delay dressed up as grooming. None of this is in the book the mother bought when the eldest was born. None of it is in the notes she used to leave, in the 1st year, on the nursery mantel, in a hand that has since grown rarer. She has not asked which brush. She has not asked about the ribbed stockings. She has asked twice in 4 years whether the children are good about dressing, and you have said yes, they are very good, which is true in the sense that they are as good as children are when the person dressing them already knows where the trouble will be. The last boot is fastened. The nursery maid is folding the nightgowns into the press. The basins want emptying. The flannels want rinsing. The room that was a night nursery a short while ago is becoming the room they will eat in. and the day nursery through the other door is still cold enough that you will not take them through yet. The eldest is standing in the middle of the carpet in her pinafore, doing the buttons at her own cuffs, which is a thing you have been letting her try since the new year, and she is slow and you do not take over. Slow on the cuffs now is faster than calling her back at the door because a cuff has come open on the stair. The middle child has found the button that was in the saucer and is holding it out as if it were a discovery. You take it. You put it in the tin on the mantel where the others live. You will sew it on at rest hour. You already know which garment it came from because you know the size of every button in this room the way some women know the pattern of their own paper. The youngest is on the floor with one boot laced and one not. You lace the other. You tie the bow twice. You sit back on your heels for the length of a breath and look at the three of them, dressed, not yet fed, hair still to do, and you feel the particular quiet that comes when the first large piece of the morning has gone the way you meant it to. Hair is next, and hair is its own map. The eldest's plait from last night is taken down, brushed from the ends up, divided, plaited again, ribbon the colour that matches the pinafore and not the frock, because the pinafore is what will show. The middle child's hair is shorter and wants a comb, not the brush, and a slide, not a ribbon, and if you forget the slide, she will spend breakfast taking hair out of her mouth. The youngest has scarcely enough for a ribbon. You damp the crown with the last of the basin water and push it to one side with your palm, which is the whole of her toilette, and she shakes her head to feel it move, which is how you know you are finished. You have never written any of this down. There is a nursery book for expenses. There is a pencil for the milk and the flannel and the shoe leather. There is no page for the wooden brush, or the left suspender, or the blue frock, or the sound the eldest makes when she first wakes. The mother, when she comes up, which is not every day and not at this hour, sees 3 clean children in 3 clean pinafores and takes that sight as the natural state of a well-run house, the way one takes a fire as the natural state of a grate. She does not ask who struck the match. You would not tell her if she did. The match is not a story that belongs in the drawing room. The match is the work. The clock on the nursery mantel, the one with the loud tick the youngest used to cry at and no longer does, has moved further than anyone downstairs will ever account for. Breakfast is next. The low table is waiting. The order of the morning, the one you never vary, has one more large piece in it before a single person below this floor has put a foot on a carpet. You send the maid for the tray. You lift the youngest onto the chair that will hold her. You look once at the 3 washed faces and you do not praise them. Praise at this hour makes them talk, and talking before porridge undoes the quiet you have just spent an hour building. You set the bibs out. You pull your own cuffs down. The room smells of soap and wool and the last of the match. It is a smell that will be gone by the time the mother asks how they slept. The maid's feet come back up the back stairs before the tray does. You hear the tin catch on the wood of the landing, then the small sound she makes when she turns her hip to the door. Steam comes in first, then the cloth, which was white 2 days ago and has gone grey along the hem, and under it the morning's breakfast already cooling on the climb. A covered basin of porridge, a jug of milk with the skin just forming, a loaf sliced to a thickness you specified last month and have had to specify again since, a pat of butter on a saucer with a hairline crack, 3 bowls, 3 spoons, and the small cup the youngest will not drink from if it is the blue one. You told the kitchen yesterday. They have sent the blue one. You lift it off and set it behind the clock on the mantel, where it will go down again later, and you put the white cup in its place. The maid does not comment. She brought what she was handed. You uncover the porridge. The top has stiffened in the time it took to climb 4 flights. Underneath it is still hot enough, and it has not been salted twice, which has happened. You dip a clean spoon, taste, and nod once. The maid begins to ladle. You watch the portions the way you watch the fire, which is to say, without appearing to watch at all. The eldest sits where she always sits, nearest the window, back straight, because you put a hand between her shoulder blades once, 3 years ago, and have not needed to do it since. The middle child sits opposite. already reaching, already being looked at, already putting the hand back into the lap. The youngest is in the chair that holds her, the strap fastened, the bib tied, her heels knocking the footrest in a rhythm she does not know she has. Bread and milk for the youngest, porridge for the other two, with a little from the jug and no sugar unless it is Sunday, and it is not Sunday. You cut the bread yourself. The kitchen cuts too thick or too thin, never the width that will soak without falling apart in the cup. This is one of the small facts that never travels downstairs as a complaint and never travels to the drawing room as information. It is simply how the bread is cut in this room. You sit, not at the head, because a low nursery table has no head that matters. You sit where you can reach the jug and the youngest's cup and the middle child's sleeve in the same movement. The silent drill begins. Spoons in the right hand, bowls not scraped until the last of the milk is gone. No speaking with the mouth full, which at this age means almost no speaking at all until the first bowl is finished. The eldest knows the drill so well she performs it with a kind of absent grace, like a person walking a path in the dark. The middle child still tests it. The youngest watches and bangs the spoon and is allowed for another few months to bang the spoon. The milk in the jug is thin. You notice it on the second pour. London milk in 1886 is a subject about which a great deal can be said, and almost none of it is said in a Kensington nursery at breakfast. You tilt the jug against the light from the window. There is a bluish cast that ought not to be there. Yesterday's was better. The day before that, the cream had been taken off before the jug left the kitchen, and you sent it down again, and waited, and the children waited, and the porridge went cold, and you did it anyway. You will do it again. Take this down, you say to the maid, and your voice does not rise and does not travel through the floor, and bring what I asked for, the nursery milk, not what is left. She takes the jug. She is gone for some minutes. In those minutes the eldest eats steadily, and the middle child looks at the door, and the youngest investigates a crust. You do not fill the silence with talk. Talk at breakfast teaches them that the meal is a social occasion, and it is not. It is food and posture and the beginning of a day that will ask more of their bodies than they yet understand. The jug comes back heavier. You pour. The color is right. You do not thank the maid in front of the children, because thanks in front of children becomes a lesson in who may be thanked and who may be sent, and you are not ready to teach that one yet. You nod. She takes her own bowl to the window seat and eats standing, which is how she prefers it, and how you allow it, so long as she is finished before you need her hands again. The thin milk is not only a kitchen matter, it is a money matter, though no one in the drawing room will ever see it that way. You earn £30 a year, all found. That phrase, all found, is the one that appears in the advertisements and in the characters written at the end of a post, and it means your food, your lodging, your washing, and the print dresses the house considers suitable for a head nurse. It does not mean the wool you bought with your own money, because the house wool itches the youngest's neck. It does not mean the stamps for the letters home. It does not mean a pension. £30 is not a poor wage for a woman in your position in this year. A cook in a house of this size might earn 28 or 30 herself, and she has the range and the kitchen maid and the heat. A housemaid might earn 16. A parlour maid, if the house kept one of standing, 18 or 20. You are paid as a person trusted with children, which is more than a person trusted with silver, and less than anyone downstairs will quite admit when the talk turns to who carries the house. The nursery maid earns £16, all found, which is at the upper end for her place, and is the reason she has stayed. A girl in her first year might take 12 or 10 if the house was mean and the attic colder than this one. £16 a year, board and lodging included, is enough to send a postal order home and still put something by if she is careful and if she does not fall ill and if the house does not decide next spring that one pair of hands will do for the nursery instead of two. Against these wages, set the standing costs of the room you are sitting in. Household account books from houses of this sort, the Kensington houses with a barrister at the chambers and 3 children on the top floor, allow the figures to be reconstructed with reasonable care. Milk for a nursery of 3, if it is honest milk and not the bluish article you just sent back, runs to several shillings a week. A quart in London this year costs 4p or 5p depending on the dairy and the season and how far the churn has come. The nursery uses more than a quart a day once porridge, bread and milk, and the afternoon cup are counted. Call it 2 shillings a week in a careful house, closer to 3 in a house that does not watch the jugs. That is £5 or £6 a year on milk alone, for this floor, before anyone downstairs has poured a cup of tea. Flannel is the next line in the nursery book. Flannel for the washing cloths which go grey and then into rags and then into the kitchen for the range. Flannel for the combinations the children wear next to the skin in a year like this one when the spring is late and the night nursery still takes a fire. A yard of good flannel costs something in the region of 1 and 6p to 2 shillings, and a child's combinations take more than a yard once the tucks and the button stands are cut. You have made them over, you have let them out, you have turned a worn front into a serviceable back. The book still shows flannel bought by the piece every quarter because children grow and cloth does not. Shoe leather is the line that surprises people who have never dressed 3 pairs of feet that do not stop growing. Children's boots in a shop of the better sort, the sort the mother would be known in if she went herself, cost from 4 and 6p to 8 shillings a pair, and they need resoling long before they need replacing, and they need replacing long before anyone downstairs has noticed the wear. 3 children, 2 seasons, the walk to the gardens in the wet. You keep a running account with the cobbler that the housekeeper settles monthly and that you watch weekly, because a cobbler who is not watched will half-sole a boot that needed a hole and charge for the hole. A barrister of some standing in a tall stucco house in Kensington may earn £1,000 in a good year, or 1,500 or more if the briefs are regular and the clerk is competent. The household books for such a house run to several £100s on servants' wages alone, and as much again on food, coal, lighting, and the quiet consumption of cloth and soap and blacking. Your £30 sits inside that total the way a single line sits inside a ledger. It is not a small line. It is not a line anyone reads aloud after dinner. What the ledger cannot show is the bargaining, the milk that comes up honest because you sent the other sort back often enough that the kitchen grew tired of the stairs. The porridge that is no longer burnt at the bottom because you uncovered the basin in front of the cook once and said nothing, which was worse than saying something. The bread cut to the right width because you went down with a slice on a plate and left it on her table and came back up, and the next morning the slices were right. None of this is in the nursery book. The nursery book is for expenses. The bargaining is for you. The middle child has stopped eating. You saw it before the spoon was set down. The jaw set the way it sets when the porridge has gone cold in the mouth and the will has gone cold with it. A refused bowl at this table is not a crisis. It is a piece of work, the same as a button that will not come through its hole. You do not coax. Coaxing teaches them that refusal is a conversation. You do not scold. There is nothing in a scold that would be worth the teaching it would undo. You take the spoon, not hers, your own, and you eat 2 mouthfuls from your bowl, which is smaller than theirs and always has been. And you look at the window as if the weather were the only subject in the room. The eldest keeps eating. She is the ally you never asked for and must never appear to use. The youngest bangs the spoon and is not looked at. The middle child sits with the hands in the lap and the bowl still steaming a little, less than it was. A full minute. Another. You pour a little more milk into the bowl, which cools it further and makes it easier, and you do not say that this is why you poured. You say, as if you had just remembered, that the walk will be as far as the flower beds if breakfast is finished, and only as far as the gate if it is not. This is not a bargain, it is information. The difference matters. A bargain can be opened again. Information simply is. The spoon is picked up. The first mouthful after a refusal is always the one that costs. After that, the drill takes over again and the bowl goes down, not empty, but empty enough. You will not scrape it. Scraping after a refusal turns the thing into a humiliation, and humiliation at a low table before 8 in the morning is a waste of a day. This will not appear in the report you give at 5 o'clock. At 5, if you are asked how they ate, you will say they ate well. You will not say that the middle child sat with a closed mouth for the length of 2 minutes and then opened it because the flower beds are better than the gate. You will not say that you used the walk as a fact and not as a prize. The mother likes to hear that the children have good appetites. Good appetites in the drawing room are a sign of good management and good health and a happy nursery. A refused bowl is a piece of grit in that story. You pick the grit out before anyone downstairs can feel it in a shoe. There is a great deal you never tell them. The mother has views on diet. Most mothers of her class do in this year. She has read, or has had recommended to her, the sort of household manual that speaks of plain food, regular hours, and the unsuitability of pastry for the young. She is not wrong in the broad strokes. Plain food is what you serve. Regular hours are what you keep. Pastry does not come up these stairs unless it is a seed cake on a Saturday, and even then you watch the quantity. What she does not know, because no manual is written by the person who carries the tray, is how much of her children's steadiness, their clear skin, the fact that the youngest has kept her weight through a thin spring, is a matter of your standing in a kitchen doorway and not a matter of her theories. You know which dairy the cook prefers when she is not being watched, and which one she uses when she is. You know that the butcher's boy will leave the end of the joint if he is not spoken to, and that the end of the joint, minced and sauced, is what the nursery was given for dinner 3 Thursdays running until you went down on the 4th and asked pleasantly to see the meat before it was cooked. You know that bread and milk can mean yesterday's loaf heated in this morning's skim, or it can mean a fresh slice in milk that still has its cream, and that the difference will not show in a report and will show over weeks in the face of a child. The father has no views on diet that you have ever heard. He has views on Latin, which the eldest is not yet learning, and views on the walk being taken whatever the weather, which is easy to hold when one leaves the house at 10 in a coat that was brushed for him. He will be congratulated later on sturdy children. He will accept the congratulations in the way of a man who assumes that sturdy children are what a well-appointed house produces, the way it produces polished stairs. You will not be the one to correct him. The last of the porridge is finished. You wipe the youngest's mouth and then her hands, and then the tray of the chair in that order, because the order saves a cloth. The eldest carries her own bowl to the side table. The middle child is allowed to do the same, having earned it back. The maid takes the tray. What will not do goes on the side to go down. The blue cup, the first jug, a crust too hard for the youngest's teeth. You will not send a note. You will send the things themselves. The kitchen can read an object as well as a sentence, and objects do not require you to raise your voice. The crumbs are brushed into your palm, and then into the fire, where they flare and are gone. The low table is wiped. In a little while it will be a lesson table, slates and beads, and the hymn book with the broken corner, but it is not that yet. It is still a breakfast table with 3 empty bowls and the smell of milk, and you are still the person who decided what went into those bowls and what was sent back down 4 flights rather than put into a child. You rinse the youngest's cup yourself, the white one. You set it on the shelf where the blue one is not. Tomorrow you will look at the tray again, and you will look at the milk again, and you will send back what will not do without making a scene of it, because a scene is what people remember, and a habit is what feeds a child. The maid is already folding the cloth. The eldest has asked, with her eyes and not her mouth, whether she may get down. You nod. The morning has another large piece in it. The table will be cleared for it. The report at 5 o'clock will mention none of this. It will mention that they breakfasted, and that they were good, and that the youngest took her milk. all of which is true, and none of which is the truth that would matter if anyone below this floor had to do what you have just done. Once the cloth is folded away, the table changes its job. You set 3 slates where the bowls stood. The beads come out of the tin on the shelf, the wooden ones, not the glass, because the youngest will still put a round thing in her mouth if you look away. The hymn book with the broken corner goes at your right hand, closed for later. It is not a schoolroom. The house has not given you one. This is the same low table, the same 3 chairs, the same window looking onto the backs of other Kensington houses, and a strip of garden the children may not enter without you. Lessons happen here because this is where the children already are, and because no one downstairs has decided yet that the eldest needs a different kind of woman sitting opposite her. You lift the youngest onto her stool and put a string of large beads in front of her, enough to occupy her hands and not enough to count as teaching in any sense the drawing room would recognize. The middle child receives the box of wooden letters, the paint worn pale on the letter E from years of small thumbs. The eldest receives a slate and a pencil you sharpened with your own knife, not the kitchen's. We begin as we always begin, you say, and you do not raise your voice for it. The maid is still in the room, finishing the fold. One glance is enough. She understands she may go, and she does, down to the landing with the breakfast flannels. The door shuts. The top floor settles into the quiet that means a different kind of work. The eldest sits up. 4 years of watching you have taught her that a straight back belongs to the lesson, even when the lesson is only a letter. You draw a capital A on her slate. Slowly, she copies it. The line wavers at the crossbar. Rather than take the pencil from her, you put your hand over hers and travel the same path again, so that her fingers learn the shape from the inside. Beside her, the middle child names the letters you point to, not always in the right order, and not always with the sound that belongs to them. There is no profit in hurrying him. A child rushed through an alphabet learns that letters are something to get past, and you have seen what that does later when a book is opened and the page looks like a wall. Counting comes next because numbers sit more calmly in a child who has just been asked to sit still for shapes. You lay 6 beads in a line and ask the middle child how many. He says 6. You break the line and make 2 groups and ask again. He has to think. The answer is still 6, and the thinking is the point. The eldest, who already knows, is told to wait, and waiting is a lesson too. The youngest rolls a bead off the table and watches it with the gravity of a person who has invented falling. A verse comes after the numbers, always after, never before, because a hymn sung too early becomes a performance and not a habit. You open the book at the place marked with a scrap of last year's ribbon. The children know the tune of all things bright and beautiful, or enough of it. Your own voice stays quiet enough that theirs have to carry the line. The youngest mouths the opening and then loses it and watches your mouth instead, which is what she has always done and which still works. You choose the hymn they already almost know, so that the morning is a deepening and not a display. Then the eldest reads. She keeps 2 voices for this. One is for when she thinks someone might be listening from the stair. The other is for when she believes it is only you. This morning she begins in the first. The words come out round and careful, each syllable polished before it leaves her mouth. You let her go on for a page. Under the performance, you can hear the places she does not yet understand, the words stored by the look of them, and not by the sense. She says through correctly, and then cannot tell you, when you ask, what the child in the story was walking through. She can pronounce meadow and has no picture of one. You wait until the page is finished. Correction in the middle of a sentence makes her fold up, and a folded child will perform more and understand less. You ask her, mildly, to tell the story back in her own words. She does. The telling is shorter and truer than the reading. That is her real level. It goes into the place where you keep such things. It will not go into the report. Here is something easy to misunderstand about a nurse and a book. The house has a story it tells itself about who teaches these children. In that story, you keep them clean and kind and regular in their habits, and when the time comes for real learning, a different person arrives. That person will be a governess. She will be a lady, or near enough to one that the word can be used without anyone in the drawing room having to examine it. She will know a little French or a little music or enough geography to point at a map without embarrassment. She will sit in a schoolroom, if the house ever makes one. The children will go down to her, or she will come up, and the work of this morning will be treated as weather they passed through on their way to being educated. The border is not a matter of skill. Nurses exist who can put a child into reading more steadily than any visiting governess an agency ever sent, and governesses exist who cannot keep a child of 5 in a chair. The border is a matter of class, and it is watched more carefully than the front door. A nurse who teaches too well or too openly is suspected of forgetting her place. A governess asked to button a boot or wipe a chin has been insulted. The same child may pass from your knee to her table in a single morning and become, in the house's accounting, 2 different kinds of problem. Your work is the body and the early conscience. Hers is the mind, once the mind has been declared ready. No one writes down who decided it was ready. The announcement comes from the mother, usually after a conversation you are not in. Advice of the period is quite plain on the point if anyone downstairs has opened it. Nursery learning ought to stay modest. Letters, a little counting, a hymn, the catechism in due course. Not grammar, not a language, not the globes. Nothing that would make it awkward later to introduce a woman who must be seen to start the child from a respectable beginning. In a professional household in 1886, the question is already in the air, even if no one has spoken it on the stair. The eldest is 6, nearly 7. Families at church have governesses. A visiting one might come 3 mornings a week for a few shillings a time. A resident one might earn £25 or £35 a year, all found, which is not far from what you earn. And yet she will be called Miss, and she will take her meals in a different room, and the house will speak of her as if she had invented the child's mind. You have watched the pattern in other houses. The nurse who did the first work is thanked and then relieved of the slate. A governess arrives on a Monday with a portfolio and a careful accent. Within a month, the child is forming the same letters in a different hand, and the father mentions at dinner that the new woman is bringing him on at a fine pace. The nurse pours the milk and says nothing. That is the ordinary shape of it. You are not that nurse yet. The slates are still yours. The beads are still yours. The hymn book is still the book they learn from. But the line can be felt the way a draft is felt under a door. It will come. When it does, the work you did before it will turn in the family story into a kind of fondness. She always liked her books, they will say, as if liking were the same as being taught, and as if the teaching had no hands. The eldest's slate is still in front of her. The capital A is better than it was in January. The capital R she has just attempted is not. She has given it a tail that belongs to a K, and her eyes are on your face to see whether you will let it stand. You will not. A damp cloth takes off the lower half. You draw the letter again, slower. She watches your hand, not the slate. That is how she learns, motion first and mark second. You have known this about her since she was 3, and you have never made a sentence of it for anyone downstairs, because that sort of sentence sounds like a claim. Again, you say. She tries it again. The tail is shorter. You nod. The small breath she has been holding goes out of her. She thought she might have to do it a 3rd time, and she would have, if the tail had not come right. This is the letter the father will notice, one evening, when she is brought down and someone puts a scrap of paper in front of her for the pleasure of watching a child perform. He will say she is coming on. A colleague or a cousin at the table will congratulate him. He will accept the congratulations in the way men accept them when the subject is their children and the labor cannot be seen. He will not mean to take anything. He will not know there is anything to take. The letter will belong to him for the length of a dinner, and then to no one, and tomorrow morning you will wipe a slate and start the line again. There is no room in this house for resentment of a dinner. You set the fact beside the other facts. It keeps. The middle child has built a tower of beads and is waiting to be told he may knock it down. You tell him he may. Once he has named 5 letters from the box. He names 4 and guesses at the 5th. You accept the 4 because a morning is not a court. The tower comes down with a clatter that makes the youngest laugh. You allow 1 extra fall, then the beads go back in the tin. The hymn book closes on the same scrap of ribbon. Tomorrow it will be the next verse, or the same one if today did not settle. A child is not advanced through a book for the look of progress. A child is advanced when what they already have will hold the next thing. No card from the mother has ever said so. The rule is yours. When she asks later how they have been, the answer is already shaped. The eldest is coming on with her letters. The middle child counted well. The youngest sat quietly, which is a small fiction and will do. You will not mention the page performed and not understood, or the letter that took 3 tries, or that the trying is the part that matters. You will not mention that these children are being taught to read in the only hours the house has left you, at the only table it has given you. With a pencil, you sharpen yourself. The version she wants is tidy. Tidy means the morning had a direction and the children moved along it and nothing snagged. The morning you actually had held a hymn sung with 3 different kinds of attention, a tower of beads that was not in the plan, a reading voice put on for an audience that was not there, and a letter corrected by your hand over a child's hand, which is how writing has always been passed on, and which no one will think to thank. You stack the slates. The wooden letters go back in their box. Through the window, the light has lifted enough to show last night's rain still smeared on the glass. Gators and the gardens are not yet. A stretch of morning remains in which the children must be held without being stirred up, and you already know which occupation will manage that and which will not. None of this is written down. The nursery book keeps other kinds of totals. There is no column for a letter learned or for the difference between a child who can say a word and a child who knows what it means. That account exists only in your head, and it is the one you trust. The eldest asks, with her mouth this time, whether they may have the picture book now that the slates are away. You say they may for a little while. She goes to the shelf as if you might change your mind. The middle child follows. The youngest stays on her stool with the last bead she was not supposed to keep, rolling it from one palm to the other. You let her. The morning is still yours. No governess has walked up the stair. Not today. The picture book lasts as long as you said it would. When you close it, the eldest looks at the window the way she looks at a door she has been told she may open. Outdoor air is the next thing on the morning, and she has known that since the slates went back in their box. The middle child is already off the stool. The youngest still has the bead. You take it from her palm without a speech and put it in the box with the others, and she accepts this as she accepts most of the small confiscations of the day, which is to say with a look and then without one. Gators first. The eldest stands still for them because she has learned that stillness shortens the job. The middle child does not stand still, and the buttons take longer, and you do not remark on it. Wool coats next, the everyday ones, not the better cloth kept for Sundays and for any afternoon on which the mother has said she may join them. Hats with the elastic that leaves a mark if you pull it too tight. Gloves that will be lost if you do not watch the middle child's hands at the gate. The youngest goes into the pelisse that buttons to the throat and then into the perambulator which the nursery maid has already brought to the landing because the thing is too awkward for one pair of arms on that turn of the stair. You take the handle, she takes the foot. Between you the carriage comes down without striking the banister, which is a small competence no one will ever see, and which you have practiced into a habit as fixed as the order of the wash basins. Your own cloak, your own bonnet, set straight without a glass, the way you set your hair, a pair of gloves that have been mended at one fingertip. The nursery maid remains. There is the night nursery to air and the morning's flannels to start, and you do not need a second pair of hands on a walk you have timed to the minute for 4 years. You tell her what you want done by the time you return, and you tell her in the same low voice you used at the grate, and she nods, and that is the whole of the exchange. The front steps are still marked by last night's rain. The pavement shines in patches. You take the 2 walking children down in front of you, and the perambulator last, because a perambulator on wet stone will run if you let it, and because the eldest likes to be first through the gate and will behave better if she is. At the pavement you arrange them. Eldest on the inside. Middle child with a hand on the carriage. Youngest under the hood, which you tip against the leftover damp. The line is the line you use every fair morning, and it is not a line the children invented. From this door to the nearest gate of Kensington Gardens is a walk you could do with your eyes shut. You do not. You do it with your eyes on the 2 pairs of boots and on the wheels and on the crossings, and you do it at a pace that will put you on the broad walk before the paths fill and will put you home again before the kitchen has a right to send the children's dinner up cold. Other households leave later. Other households leave earlier and make a show of it. Yours leaves at the hour that keeps the morning from fraying, and you have never asked the mother whether she has noticed, because she has not asked you how the hour was chosen. The first stretch is streets. A crossing sweeper at the corner, not paid by you, nodded to, because a nod costs nothing, and a slight can follow you home in a child's mouth. A baker's boy with a tray. A woman in a mantle who glances at the children's coats, and then at your face, and then away, which is the glance of someone placing a household by its outdoor wool. You feel that glance land. You have felt it for years. The children's public conduct is not, in the end, a report on the children. It is a report on you. A loud voice on this pavement is your failure. A soiled glove is your failure. A child who runs, or who speaks to a stranger, or who drags a heel through the wet and brings the dirt into the next drawing room that looks at them, is entered against your name in a book nobody writes down and everybody keeps. The children do not know this yet. You knew it before you took the post. You feel it in your shoulders now, the way you feel the weight of the carriage handle, as a fact of the work, and not as a thought you have to summon. Here is something easy to misunderstand about a nanny in a public garden in 1886. The garden looks like leisure, the gravel, the trees, the water, the air after a night of rain, all of it looks like the morning has opened into ease. It has not. The paths of Kensington Gardens are a workplace with better light, and the women who walk them know the ranking as clearly as any servants' hall knows who sits above the salt. The ranking is not written. It does not need to be. You read it off a perambulator first. Brass fittings and a deep hood and tires that do not complain will place a nurse higher than a carriage with a worn lining and a wheel that lists. You read it off the children's cloth next, and off whether the coats match, and off whether there is a nursery maid walking 2 paces behind in a clean apron, or only the head nurse alone with 3 charges and a handle. You read it off the square the house stands in, which other nurses will already know, or will ask, or will guess from the cut of a police. A house in a good Kensington terrace is not a house in Belgravia, and a barrister of some standing is not a peer, and nobody on these paths is confused about that. Nobody needs to be rude about it either. The knowledge sits in the angle of a nod. Who speaks first is the rest of the law. A nurse who has been 20 years with one family, whose eldest charges are now at school, and whose youngest still rides under a hood, may address whom she likes. A nurse new to her post waits. A nurse whose employer is known, whose address is known, whose wages are rumoured to be handsome, may offer a good morning to a woman she has never sat beside and be answered as if the acquaintance were already made. You have been 4 years in this house. That is long enough to be recognised and not long enough to hold court. You are greeted by some and you greet some, and there are 3 or 4 benches you will pass without slowing, and the women on them will not take offence because they would do the same. Livery comes into it more than the drawing rooms admit, not footman's livery, the quieter kind, a particular shade of cloak that one household has chosen for its nurses, a ribbon on a hat that matches the children's hats, a way of turning out 3 small bodies so that they look from a distance like a single decision. You do not have a household colour. You have good cloth, kept clean, and a perambulator that was new when you came and is not new now, and that is enough to keep you in the middle of the order, which is where a barrister's nurse belongs, and which you have no interest in climbing. Climbing on these paths is a kind of work too, and it is not the work you were hired for. The gate. Gravel after pavement, a softer sound under the wheels. The trees still hold last night's weather in their bark. The broad walk opens the way it always opens, wide enough for carriages of a different sort, and for the long procession of nurses that uses it as a road. You do not take the first bench. The first benches are for women who wish to be seen at once. You walk on until the line of perambulators thins a little, until a stretch of path gives the eldest room to walk without being crowded into someone else's wheels, and then you stop where you usually stop. Not because the view is finer, but because the ground here dries faster and the youngest can be lifted out for a few minutes without sitting her down in wet. A nurse you know by sight is already there. Not a friend. The word is too large for what the paths allow. An acquaintance of the bench, 4 years in the making, built out of weather remarks and the names of streets and the occasional question that is not quite a question. Her charges are 2, both older than your youngest, both in coats a grade above yours. She nods. You nod. The children are permitted to stand near one another without speaking much, which is the correct temperature for a morning that is not a visit. After a minute, she says the rain held off, and you agree that it held off. And then, because this is what the benches are for, and because no drawing-room carpet will ever receive it, she mentions a house in Queen's Gate that is looking for a head nurse from midsummer. The wages named are £35, all found, which is 5 more than you take. And the family is smaller, and the last woman left for a marriage, not for a grievance. She says this last part the way such things are said on gravel, without emphasis, so that anyone passing would hear only 2 nurses passing the time. You do not ask the name of the family. You do not need to. If the post is real, it will come round again, through her or through someone else, before any registry office prints it. That is the other use of these paths. Vacancies travel faster along the broad walk than they travel through paper. So do the houses that look finer than they pay. A terrace may be stucco and tall and still be late with a quarter's wages. A nursery may be large and still send the nurse down to eat after the kitchen has finished, on whatever is left. A mother may speak prettily at an interview and then count every candle. None of this is slander on a bench. It is weather of a kind. It is the map you walk by when the time comes to walk. You offer in return nothing about your own books. You say the morning has been fair enough, and that the youngest is cutting a back tooth without much fuss, and that is as much of your household as you mean to set down on public gravel. She accepts the thinness of it. She would give the same. 2 other nurses pass, one with a pram so well kept it might have left the shop last week, one without a pram at all, only a single boy in a sailor collar who is being talked to as if he were already at school. They do not stop. The first has no need to. The second is in a hurry that may be real, or may be the hurry of a woman who does not yet know where she is allowed to sit. You watch the boy out of the side of your eye because your middle child is watching him, and because admiration on these paths can turn into a request, and a request into a conversation you have not chosen. The middle child says nothing. You put a hand on the perambulator hood as if you were only settling it. Time to move. The acquaintance of the bench understands. You gather the two walkers, settle the youngest who has had her minutes on the gravel and is ready to be displeased about going back under the hood, and you take the path that will loop you toward the water and then home. The eldest wants the pond. She always wants the pond. You can give her the near edge of it and still keep your minute. You say so, and she accepts the near edge as if it were the whole, which is a bargain you have struck with her so often it no longer needs new words. Halfway along that loop, you see the meeting you are not going to have. 3 nurses on a bench set back under the trees, 2 prams parked at angles, a cluster of children already slightly too loud for the hour. One of the nurses you know by more than sight. She was in a house 2 streets from yours last winter, and the house did not keep her, and the reasons that came along the paths were not all the same reason. She is in a new post now, or looking as if she is, and she has the posture of a woman who will rise if you slow down. She will ask how you are. She will ask how the children are. She will ask before the second minute is out whether your household is contented and whether the mother is at home much and whether you have heard of anything, and the children will hear the shape of those questions even if they miss the words. Children carry shapes downstairs. They carry them into the drawing room at 5 o'clock in a sentence no one told them to prepare. You have spent 4 years making sure that what crosses the first landing is a version you have already chosen. You do not slow down. The eldest has seen a child she thinks she knows or would like to know, and her step changes. You feel it through the line the way you feel a wheel finding a rut. You say, not loudly, that the gravel is wetter under the trees and that you will take the open path, and you say it as if the open path had always been the plan. The middle child looks at the bench, and then at you, and then at the pond, which is now the nearer promise. The youngest cannot see over the hood. The nurse on the bench half rises anyway, and you give her the nod that acknowledges a person without opening a gate, and you keep the carriage moving, and after a few yards, the posture on the bench sits down again, because that nod is a language she speaks too. If you are asked later why you did not stop, you have the sentence ready. The youngest was cold. The path under the trees was still holding the rain. You needed to be back for dinner. Any of those will do, and all of them are true enough to say without a change in your face. None of them is the reason. The reason is a set of questions you will not have asked in front of 3 children who repeat what they do not understand, and a woman whose next post is not yet solid enough for her talk to be safe, and a bench that would have held you 5 minutes past your minute. You will not put that into a report at 5 o'clock. You will not put it into the nursery book. You will put it where you put the rest of the morning's real weather, which is nowhere that a parent can reach. The pond, the near edge, 2 minutes of ducks that are not as interesting as the eldest had hoped and are still better than a bench. Then the turn for home. The same streets in reverse, the same crossings. The middle child's glove is still on, which you count as a quiet success and do not praise, because praise of a glove on a public pavement can undo the glove. At the steps, the nursery maid is there to take the foot of the carriage again. The house receives you with its usual indoor air, coal and soap, and the faint starch of the morning's linen. Behind you, the gardens go on without you. Benches filling and emptying, wages named, vacancies passed from mouth to mouth, none of it crossing any drawing room carpet in this street or in the next. You have been gone the length of time you meant to be gone. The children are in the same order they left in. Nothing happened that will need explaining, which is the highest kind of outing and the kind that looks from below like a simple walk. The outdoor wool comes off in the hall of the nursery floor, not downstairs, because wet cloth and street dust do not belong among the children's dinner things. Gaiters first, then the coats, shaken once at the landing window and hung on the pegs that have held them for 4 winters. The eldest stands still for the unbuttoning. The middle child hops. The youngest is lifted, because the last hook is always higher than a short arm believes it is. You work by feel as much as by sight. The cloth is damp at the hems from the grass near the pond, and the lining of the middle child's coat has that particular London smell that no nursery soap quite lifts, coal and leaf mould and the iron of the park railings. Cheeks next. A basin, a flannel that is not the morning's flannel, lukewarm water the nursery maid has had the sense to leave ready. You take each face in the same order you woke them. The eldest submits as if washing were a lesson. The middle child watches the window while you work, which is better than watching you, because watching you invites argument. The youngest's mouth is still faintly sticky from a sweet you did not authorize and will not mention. 3 faces, 3 towels, the small ceremony of being made fit for the table they have not yet sat down to. Hands after faces, nails, because Kensington gravel finds its way under them no matter how carefully a child is told to keep fists closed. The nursery maid takes the outdoor things through to the press and comes back for the perambulator rug, which must be brushed before it is folded, or it will hold the morning in its pile until Thursday. You reset the room while she is gone. The low table pulled out, cloth spread, not the best cloth, the everyday one with the mended corner turned toward the wall. 3 chairs, the high chair drawn up, bibs laid ready. The fire built a little because children coming in from November air will sit badly if the room has gone off. A window opened 2 inches and shut again. The smell of wet wool does not belong at dinner any more than the wool itself does. Dinner ought to be up by now. It is not. You give it another few minutes because a tray delayed by a landing or a kitchen girl with 2 hands full is not the same as a tray forgotten, and you do not go down for the first of those. The minutes pass. No step on the back stair, no rattle of the nursery gate. The eldest has begun to arrange the spoons. The middle child has begun to ask whether dinner is coming, which is the question that, asked twice more, will become a mood. You send the nursery maid to the landing to listen. She comes back with nothing useful in her face. You go down yourself. The back stair of a Kensington house is narrower than the front and darker even at midday, because the architect who drew the stucco front did not spend his invention on the flights the staff use. You know every turn of it. The worn place on the 3rd step from the half landing. The smell that changes as you descend. Nursery soap giving way to polish. Polish giving way to the kitchen, which announces itself well before you reach it. Heat first, then dripping and onion, and the particular metal note of a range that has been burning since before you lit the nursery grate. You pause in the doorway the way you always pause, long enough to take the temperature of the room before you enter it. The cook is at the range. Her face is high-colored, which may be the fire and may be the morning and may be you. A kitchen maid moves between dresser and table with the speed of a person who has already been spoken to. The children's tray sits on the end of the table, partly laid. Mutton, from the look of the covered dish. Potatoes. A pudding basin with a cloth tied over it that has not yet been turned out. Late, then, but not missing. You do not remark on the time. Remarking on the time in a cook's kitchen is a kind of claim, and you are not in a position to make claims here. Here is the fact of your place, and it is easier to see from a kitchen doorway than from the nursery floor, where the work fills the view and leaves less room for the shape of the post itself. You do not eat with the family. That is so obvious it hardly wants saying. And yet people who have never lived in a house of this size sometimes imagine that a nurse who spends her waking life with the children must, at some point in the day, sit down in the dining room and be handed a plate. She does not. The dining room is not yours. The drawing room is not yours. The front stair is yours only when 3 small bodies make it so. And even then, you are the person behind them, not the person the house is arranged for. At 5 o'clock you will stand just inside a door and wait, and that will be the nearest you come to their table. You do not quite eat with the servants either. Downstairs has a hall for that, a long table, a set of places ranked by post, cook and housekeeper at the head if the house runs that way. Housemaids and kitchen girls below, the men's side if there are men enough to make a side. A head nurse is, on paper, an upper servant. Your wage says so, your outdoor clothes say so, cut closer to a lady's than a housemaid's print. Your speech, which you have kept careful for years because children copy what they hear, says so more loudly than you mean it to. None of that puts a regular chair for you at the hall table. The children eat in the nursery. Someone must sit with them. That someone is you. By the time they are settled and the plates are down, the hall has often finished, or is far enough along that arriving late means taking a seat that has not been kept, and a plate that has been kept warm at the cost of a look. So you eat upstairs. A corner of the nursery table after the children have been served, or a tray brought up later and gone cold at the edges, or, on some days, nothing that could be called a meal until the house has dropped into its evening and you can slip down for whatever is left. The kitchen will feed you. It will not wait for you. Those are different things. Downstairs will not fully claim you. You are the woman from the top floor, the one who comes down with requests and goes up again, the one whose work is invisible to them except when it makes more work, more hot water, more milk, more pudding sent up on a tray that someone has to carry. You speak like the landing above their heads. You know the children's names in a way the kitchen does not, and you use that knowledge without meaning to, and it sounds, from the range, like a kind of ownership. Cooks have been known to call a nurse grand. Housemaids have been known to say she gives herself airs. Neither is quite fair, and both are understandable. You sleep nearer the children than you sleep to them. You take your orders, when you take them, from a woman in a morning dress, not from the housekeeper's book. You are in the house and not of the hall, and halls notice that. Upstairs will never claim you either. The mother is kind enough, in the way of women who have hired competence and prefer not to inspect the machinery. She will ask after the children, and thank you and believe, without malice, that thank you covers the ground. She will not ask where you dine. She has never stood in this doorway. The father passes you on the stair perhaps twice in a week and lifts 2 fingers as if you were a clerk in chambers. You are the reason his children appear at 5 o'clock with clean hands and something ready to say. He does not owe that thought any room in his day. The house is built to spare him it. This is the half place, not a tragedy. A floor plan. The top of the house is yours, and also a kind of exile. You have authority that stops at the stair, and a skill that the drawing room depends on and cannot quite see. And in between those 2 facts, you spend your dinner hour in a kitchen doorway, reading a cook's shoulder blades for weather. You step in. The cook does not turn at once. When she does, it is with the wooden spoon still in her hand, which is not a greeting and is not quite a warning. You speak first, because the person who needs something always speaks first, and because you have learned that a request offered as information travels further in this room than a request offered as a request. The tray is nearly ready, you say. You will take it up yourself, if that helps. It helps. It also means you will carry a loaded tray up 4 flights, which is not nothing, and which the kitchen will remember as you being useful rather than you being owed. That is acceptable. Useful is a currency that spends in both directions. The mutton is yesterday's, recooked, which you knew it would be by this point in the week. The gravy has been made up fresh enough. You lift the lid a fraction, not to insult the cooking, only to know what you are walking into upstairs. Too rich for the youngest. You have said so before. You say so again, mildly, as if you were mentioning the weather. The cook's mouth tightens. The range throws a breath of heat across the flags. There is a dinner for upstairs later. You can see it in the birds waiting on the slab and in the state of the kitchen maid's hands. and a children's tray is not the work this room wants to be judged on. She tells you the gravy is the gravy, and that children who are fed properly do not pick, and that she has not the time to make a second sauce for a nursery that already has milk to spare. You could carry that upstairs. A sentence to the housekeeper, a quiet word when the mother asks, as she sometimes does on a Friday, whether the children are eating. You do not. A complaint about gravy becomes, by the time it has travelled 2 floors and changed mouths, a story about a nurse who cannot manage and a cook who will not be spoken to, and you will still need this kitchen tomorrow. The youngest can have the potato and a little of the meat without the sauce. You have done that before. It does not appear in anyone's book. Pudding, then. You had asked for a simple baked custard. What sits under the cloth is a jam roll, left over from the servant's pudding yesterday, if you are any judge of a basin. You look at it. The cook looks at you looking at it. Somewhere behind you a pan hisses, and the kitchen maid flinches as if the sound had been a name. You take the roll. It is not what you ordered, and it will do. The children will eat jam before they eat custard on most days, which is not a dietary theory anyone in this house has written down and is still true. You will not send it back. Sending it back would be a scene, and a scene in a kitchen at this hour with a range going and an upstairs dinner coming is a thing that gets told later in the hall as a nurse forgetting herself. You thank the cook for the tray. You mean some of it. You lift the tray yourself the way you offered, and you take the back stair more slowly than you came down, because 4 flights with mutton and a pudding basin is a different journey from 4 flights with nothing in your hands. The nursery maid meets you at the last landing and takes one side. Together you get it through the gate without tilting the gravy, which would have been a poor joke after the conversation below. The children are still in their chairs. The eldest has stopped arranging spoons and started watching the door, which is as close as she comes to complaint. You serve in the old order. Meat cut small for the youngest, gravy withheld without a speech about why. Potatoes, a little salt. The jam roll divided into 3, the end piece to the middle child, because the end piece is the prize, and the middle child has had a long morning of being the one who is not eldest and not baby. You sit, not at the head, at the side, where you can reach a dropped spoon and a wobbling cup without standing, and where your own plate, when you fetch it, will not look like a 4th child's. They eat. The youngest smears jam along the rim of the bowl, and you wipe it before it becomes a cuff. The eldest sits straight because sitting straight is the price of being served first. The middle child tells a story about the ducks that leaves the ducks out and keeps the feeling, and you listen with the part of your attention that is not counting swallows and watching for the cough the youngest has been threatening since Tuesday. Your own dinner is the edge of the mutton and a potato that has gone dry. You eat it without deciding whether it is good. Hunger at this hour is a practical matter, like the fire. After the plates, the reset again, crumbs brushed, cloth folded, the high chair wiped, because jam finds the joints of the wood and stays there if you give it the afternoon. The nursery maid takes the tray down. You do not go with her. Once in a morning is enough to spend in that doorway. The children are put to quiet things at the window seat. A picture book, a box of bricks, the kind of occupation that looks like rest and is really a way of holding them still until the next clock. You're sorting the morning's flannels for the laundry when the housekeeper's step sounds on the stair. You know it. Everyone on this floor knows it. Not heavy, not hurried. The step of a woman who expects doors to be ready. She has come for the linen cupboard. The nursery linen lives in the press beside the night nursery door, sheets and pillowcases and the smaller cloths counted and listed in a book that is hers to inspect and yours to keep honest. You have already counted. You counted on Tuesday when you put the clean wash back, and you counted again this morning with your eye while the nursery maid hung the outdoor wool, because a missing sheet is easier to find before a housekeeper asks for it than after. You do not say this. You open the cupboard as if the question had only just arrived, as if the stacks were waiting for her gaze to make them real. She looks. She runs a finger along a fold. She asks after the cot sheet that was sent down last week with a worn place, and you tell her it is in the mending basket and will go back when the seam will hold, which is true. She nods. The nod is not approval exactly. It is the sound a well-run shelf makes in a woman's mind. She does not ask how the children ate. She does not ask why you were in the kitchen. Those are not linen questions, and she is here on linen business, and the half place works in her favor too. She can govern the cupboard without governing you, and you can keep the cupboard as if it were hers, and both of you can leave the visit without having to name the fact that you already knew every sheet in it before she set her hand on the latch. She goes down. The press is closed. The children have not looked up from the bricks. From below, if anyone is listening, the top floor is quiet again, which is what a quiet top floor is supposed to sound like in a house that prefers not to know how the quiet is made. The bricks can stay a little longer. You do not clap your hands, you do not raise your voice, you simply begin to put the room into the order rest requires, and the children know that order the way they know a hymn they have sung too often to forget. The youngest is already working one fist against an eye. The middle child builds a last tower higher than the bricks will bear and watches it go over without making a sound about it. The eldest looks at the window, measuring the light, deciding whether there is room to bargain. There is not. You decided that before the housekeeper's step had left the stair, you send the nursery maid first. The morning's flannels sit in the basket by the door, still cool at the hems, and the laundry lies 2 floors down and a corridor away. She may take them, and she may sit for 20 minutes on her own bed afterward if the laundry maid does not keep her. You say this in the same even voice you used before 6. The one that does not travel past the landing. She nods. She is glad of the errand and gladder of the 20 minutes, and she is young enough that both facts sit plainly on her face. You let them sit. When the door has shut behind her, the top floor holds only you and the 3 of them, which is the proper population of this hour. The blinds come halfway down, not fully. A room made dark in the middle of the day can turn rest into an argument, and an argument at this time of the afternoon is a thing you will then have to account for. Half down is enough. The light goes soft. The fire, mended after the plates went down, ticks rather than snaps. You lift the youngest first, because the youngest still counts being carried as a kind of winning. The middle child follows without being told and lies on the coverlet with both arms straight, as if rest were a drill and she meant to pass it. The eldest comes last. You do not undress them. This is not night. Boots off, sashes loosened, the eldest's collar unhooked at the back so it will not print a line into the skin. A folded shawl goes over the youngest. The night nursery door stays a hand's width open because a door shut fast at this hour can persuade a small person that they have been left, and you will not spend the next 40 minutes taking that idea apart. You sit. The chair by the day nursery table belongs to you at this hour in a way it does not quite belong at any other. The mending basket comes up onto your lap. The nursery account book comes out of the drawer where it lives under the extra dusters, and you open it to the week. A needle is already threaded. The first minutes of quiet are too dear to spend looking for a needle. On the page, in your own hand, the week is a column of small facts. Milk, extra on Tuesday. Flannel, 2 yards from the draper the house deals with, charged to the nursery book and not to the kitchen. The middle child's left boot, heel gone through, sent down to the cobbler in the mews. Soap. A bottle of camphorated oil. The eldest's gloves, one lost on Thursday and not yet replaced, written there so that you will remember it when you next go out, and so that if the mother asks where the gloves have gone, you will have a date instead of a pause. You take up the stocking with the thin place at the heel and begin. A child's winter coat, the kind that looks from the path as if it had been made for this winter and this child alone. Costs from a respectable Kensington draper in these years, somewhere between 25 shillings and £2, according to the cloth and according to whether a tailor's hand has been near it. A pelisse for the youngest, cut long so the hem may be let down next year if the seasons are kind. can run higher still if the mother has seen a thing in a shop window and decided the nursery ought to have it. Ready-made from a city warehouse comes cheaper. 12 shillings, 15. The buttons are not as good. The lining will be the first part to go. You know this because you are the one who will sit with that lining in your lap in February, turning it, patching it, making it look from a pavement's distance like a garment that has always been whole. The house prefers the pavement's distance. The children go down at 5 in coats that appear new. Compliments arrive in the drawing room about how well they are turned out. The mother is not lying when she receives those compliments. She ordered the first coat, the household paid, and the bill went into a book that is not yours. What she does not see, because no one has ever thought it her business to see, is the second life of that coat. The pelisse the eldest wore 3 winters ago has already been unpicked, pressed, recut through the shoulders, and given to the middle child with a new collar bound in a scrap of velvet left from a cushion the drawing room no longer wanted. The youngest will have it next year if the cloth holds. In the mending basket there is a paper of buttons that matches no single garment still in use, because those buttons belong to garments that have been taken apart and made into other garments. And the buttons, unlike the children, do not outgrow themselves. This is not meanness. A barrister's household in Kensington is not short in the way a clerk's house is short. It is the habit of houses that like to look open-handed in the park and careful in the ledger. Cutting down is what competent women have always done with children's clothes. The competence in this house is yours. The look in the park is credited elsewhere. You set another stitch. The thin place in the heel closes. You will not mention the stocking at 5 o'clock. A mended heel is not news. A new coat would be news. The difference between those two facts is the difference between the day you will describe and the day you are sitting inside. The account book stays open while you work. You do not write in it every afternoon. You write when something has been spent or something has been used up, and you write in a hand a housekeeper could read if she asked, which she sometimes does, and that a mother could read if she ever came up for that purpose, which she has not in the 4 years you have kept this particular book. The book is not a secret. It is simply a thing that lives on the top floor, like the spare soap and the extra flannel, and the knowledge of which child will wake from rest in a temper if the room has been allowed to grow too warm. The day you will offer the mother later is a clean day. They breakfasted well. They walked as far as the water and back. The eldest recited. The youngest took no chill. You will say these things because they are true and because they are the kind of true that fits into 5 minutes in a doorway, which is as long as a report is expected to last. You will not say that a bowl came back once. You will not say that you turned the perambulator for a reason that had nothing to do with the wind. You will not say that a question was asked on the stair whose honest answer has no place among the teacups. Those things happened. They are not, as this house understands news, things that happened. The page in front of you holds a different weather. Same hours, same children, the boot that will not see out the month, the flannel that went faster this week because one of them has a little cough you are watching and have not yet sent downstairs, because a cough named downstairs becomes a visit, and a visit at the wrong hour undoes the rest of the afternoon. You write camphorated oil and you do not write the rest. The rest stays in your head, which is where most of the nursery's real accounts are kept. Under the account book, in the same drawer, there is a letter. You did not write it today. You wrote it on Sunday in the hour after the children were down, with the lamp you will light later and a penny bottle of ink that is yours, not the house's. The paper is cheap and a little thin. You do not buy the cream-laid sheets the drawing room uses for its notes. A letter home does not require cream-laid. It requires a clear hand and a postal order folded inside, and the knowledge that the person who opens it will turn first to the order and then to the writing, which is the right order of things when the writing is mostly to say that you are well and the children are well and that you remain, as ever, their affectionate daughter. The postal order is for 7 shillings and 6pence. It is not every week. It cannot be every week, not on £30 a year, all found, with your own boots to keep and your own small store of tea and the occasional paper of pins the house does not think to provide. 7 and 6. Perhaps once a month, sometimes less if a pair of gloves has had to come out of your own money because you lost the nursery pair and will not put that loss on the book if you can help it. The order goes to an address the kitchen has never heard and the drawing room will never ask for. Rooms over a shop or a cottage at the end of a lane, or whatever the place your mother keeps now looks like from the road, you have not seen it in 2 years. The last visit was a Wednesday and a Thursday taken from your fortnight in the summer, and when you came back, the youngest did not know your face for a full minute, which you have not put into any letter because some facts are not improved by travel. This house has no picture of that life. It does not need one. You arrived with a written character and a tin box and a pair of respectable boots, and that was the whole of your history as far as the household was concerned. That you have a mother who waits on an envelope, that a younger sister is in a situation in another county and writes when she can, that a portion of the £30, which already looks larger on paper than it feels in the hand, leaves Kensington every month and becomes flour or coal, or the rent on a room you do not sleep in. None of that is hidden exactly. It is simply not useful to the running of a night nursery. The parents, if they think of your people at all, think of a vague countryside from which good nurses are understood to come. They do not think of a specific table or of a specific woman turning a postal order toward the window to be sure of the sum. You do not spend the hour on that thought. There is nowhere on the top floor to put such a thought that would not color the rest of the afternoon, and the afternoon still has work in it. You fold it away the way you fold the finished stocking, heel made good, ready for the morning. The letter will go out tomorrow if you can send the nursery maid as far as the pillar box, or on Thursday if you take the 2 elder ones past it on the walk. The order will be cashed in a post office you can see without trying. Someone will be briefly easier because of it. That is the other ledger. It does not appear in the nursery book. It does not appear in the report at 5. It is as real as the mended heel, and from downstairs it is just as hard to see. The youngest sighs and turns. You look up, still asleep. The middle child has one hand open on the coverlet, the fingers slightly curled, the way they curl around a crayon when she thinks no one is watching how she holds it. The eldest is pretending, or nearly. You can tell the difference. You let the pretense stand. Rest hour is not a court. You take up the next thing in the basket. A tear in a pinafore, small along a seam that was always going to go. You know this pinafore. You know when it was bought and what it replaced and how many times it has already been turned. You set the needle and you leave the account book open beside you, not because you will write again before the children stir, but because the 2 of them belong together on the table. The garment that must last and the page that says what lasting costs. Below you, the house is in its own afternoon. A door. The muffled lift of a voice that is not meant to carry this far and does not. You do not go down to find out. This hour is the one stretch of the day that is not arranged for anyone else's eye, and you will not spend it on a landing listening for news that will find you soon enough if it is news that concerns you. The fire ticks. The needle goes in and comes out. 2 floors down, a tray is being laid for a meal you will not eat. You know that sound the way you know this light. You stay where you are, with the mending and the book and the 3 quiet rooms of children, and you keep the hour, which is the one thing in this house you are allowed to keep without being asked afterward how you kept it. The youngest wakes first, as she usually does, with a small sound that is not quite a complaint and not quite a call. You are already on your feet before the sound has finished. The middle child follows a minute later, sitting up in the half-dark with her hair flattened on one side and her expression already assembling itself into a question. The eldest takes longer. He always does. You let him. Rest hour ends when the children end it, not when the clock decides, and you have never seen any good come of forcing the last 10 minutes. You go to the window and lift a corner of the blind. The glass is not running. The sky over the gardens is a high, even grey, the sort that holds off rain without promising anything better. The flags of the pavement below look dry enough. That is the afternoon's first decision, and it is yours. If the glass had been wet, you would have kept them in. A box of bricks, a picture book, the middle child's doll with the cracked china forehead that she will not let anyone mend. Fair weather, or weather near enough to fair, means a second outing, shorter than the mornings, and with a purpose attached so that it does not look like idleness if anyone downstairs happens to ask. You take the 2 elder ones. The youngest stays. The nursery maid receives this instruction without comment. She knows the youngest's afternoon habits as well as you do. The way she will want the wooden horse, the way she will not want it 5 minutes later, the way a story read twice will hold her if the voice does not hurry. You tell the maid where you are going and when you mean to be back, and you tell her in the same even tone you use for the morning tasks, because a girl of 16, left alone on the top floor with a child who is not yet 4, needs the time more than she needs the courtesy of a question. Outdoor wool again, though not the full morning kit. Gaiters for the middle child, whose ankles take the damp even when the flags look dry. The eldest's coat, the one with the velvet collar that has been turned once already and will not stand another winter without showing it. Caps, gloves. You check their hands before the gloves go on, because a shop counter is no place to discover that someone has been at the jam again. The youngest watches from the doorway of the day nursery with the wooden horse under one arm and an expression that you refuse, on principle, to read as betrayal. You will be an hour. She has been left before. She will be left again. You touch the top of her head as you pass, and you do not make a speech of it. The back stairs, then the side door, then the street. Kensington in the middle of the afternoon has a different weight from Kensington at 11. The morning perambulators have thinned. A grocer's boy goes by with a basket on his head. A woman in a sealskin jacket crosses at the corner without looking at you, which is the ordinary order of things and requires no remark. You walk on the inside of the pavement with the middle child by the hand and the eldest a half step ahead, where you can see him and he can practice being the one who knows the way. He does not know the way. He knows the first 2 turnings, and then his certainty runs out, which is as it should be at 7, and you let him keep the lead until the 3rd corner, where you take it back without announcing that you have done so. Teaching folds into the walk the way thread folds into a seam. If you do it properly, no one sees the work, only the finished edge. A penny is 12 to the shilling. You have told him this before. You tell him again when you pass the newspaper boy, not because the boy matters, but because the board at his feet has a price on it, and a number sitting in the open air is a better lesson than a number on a slate. The middle child wants to know why the boy is allowed to shout, and she is not. You say that the street has rules and the nursery has rules, and they are not the same rules, and that she may ask you again when you are indoors if the answer still troubles her. She accepts this with the gravity she reserves for answers she does not like. The eldest has already moved on. He wants to know whether a half-crown is more than 2 shillings, which it is, and you make him say why, standing for a moment at the curb while a hansom goes past and the horse's breath shows in the grey air which way to look. Left, then right, then left again. You have them do it even on a quiet stretch because the habit is the point, not the traffic, which people one does not comment on in the street. The man with the tray of muffins, the girl selling matches, the woman whose hem is wetter than the weather accounts for. You do not explain the last of these. You do not need to. A child who has been taught not to point will, if you are consistent, stop pointing at almost anything, and the almost is a mercy you will not examine in the road. The shop is a draper's, 3 streets from the house, the sort of establishment that smells of new cloth and floor oil and the dry, faintly sweet dust that collects in rolls of flannel. The mother ordered 2 lengths last week, one for the middle child's winter petticoats and one to cut down for the youngest, and a note came this morning to say the parcel was ready. You have the note in your pocket. You have the household name on it, which is not your name, and you have walked this errand often enough to know exactly how far that piece of paper will carry you and where it will stop. A bell on the door, the warmth after the street. The two children go quiet in the way they have been trained to go quiet indoors among strangers, which is to say, they do not speak and they also do not touch, and their eyes do the work their hands are forbidden. The shopwoman sees the coats first. You have watched this happen in more than one doorway. Good cloth on small bodies changes the temperature of a counter. She comes forward a fraction sooner than she would if you had come alone, and her voice, when she addresses you, has a polish on it that is not quite the polish she keeps for the women who sit down to choose. She calls you nurse. She does not call you madam. The distinction is so ordinary that you no longer feel it as a slight, only as information, the way you feel the weight of a can on the turn of the stair. You produce the note. She reads it, nods, and goes into the back for the parcel. You stand. The children stand. There is a chair by the counter for customers who are choosing, and you are not choosing. You are collecting. The difference is the whole of the transaction, and it is written in the fact that your feet remain where they are. This is worth taking slowly, because a nanny in a shop occupies a position that the shop itself has never quite decided how to furnish. You are not the servant who is sent for kitchen soap and spoken to from a distance over the head, as if the errand had arrived without a person attached to it. The children prevent that. Their coats prevent it. The fact that you can, if asked, describe the exact shade the mother wanted and the exact width and whether the flannel was to be white or unbleached prevents it further. You speak the household's language at the counter. You know the account is good. You know because you have been in this post 4 years that the mother settles at the end of the quarter and does not like to be dunned, and that this particular draper has never had cause to dun her. All of that stands you a little nearer to the world of the women who sit down. You are not, however, one of those women. You do not open the account. You do not ask to see a second roll. You do not say that the first will not do. If the parcel is wrong, you will take it home and the mother will send it back, and the sending back will be her act, performed in a note you may or may not be asked to carry. You do not sit. You do not rest an elbow on the wood. You do not, even when the shop is quiet and the shopwoman is disposed to be pleasant, allow the conversation to wander toward anything that is not the parcel, the note, and the question of whether a boy can be spared to carry it as far as the door. Who is served? A lady who has come in behind you will be served first if she is recognized, and you will step aside without being asked, because the children's coats, however good, are still children's coats, and you are still the woman who put them on, who carries. If the parcel is small, you carry it. If it is large, a boy may be sent as far as the pavement and no farther, unless the rain has started, in which case you will take it yourself rather than stand in a doorway arranging a courtesy that was never really offered. How close you are allowed to stand to the mother's world of accounts. Close enough to know the name on the ledger, close enough to be trusted with the collection, not close enough to see the column of figures, not close enough to be the person whose signature makes the column move. The shopwoman returns with the parcel, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string in the shop's particular knot, which you could undo in the dark. She sets it on the counter between you. You check the label. You do not open it. Opening it would imply a doubt you are not paid to have in public. You thank her. She thanks you, or rather she thanks the household through you, which is a different sentence wearing the same clothes. The eldest, who has been very good, is allowed to hold the string for the first dozen steps of the walk home, and then you take the parcel back because his arm is tiring and he will not say so. The grey has thickened. It is not rain yet. It will be rain before you reach the side door if you dawdle, and you do not dawdle. The middle child wants to know whether the flannel in the parcel is for her. You say that some of it is, and that she will see it when it has been cut, and that asking for a thing before it exists is a habit you will not feed. She considers this. The eldest has gone back to coins. "A florin," he announces, "is 2 shillings. You agree, and you make him tell you what 2 florins are, and he gets it right, and you let the getting right stand without adding a further sum, because a lesson that ends on a success will walk home more willingly than a lesson that is stretched until it snaps." Halfway along the second street, the middle child asks the other question. She asks it to the pavement first, as if the stones might answer and spare her the need to look up. Then she asks it again, properly, to you. "Why is Papa never in the nursery?" You have had versions of this before, not always about the father, sometimes about the drawing room, sometimes about the closed door on the first landing that the children are not to knock upon in the morning. The shape is the same. A child has noticed a gap in the house and has decided, on a grey afternoon, with a parcel under your arm and no audience but you, to put a name to it. The answer either parent would have scripted is ready enough. You have heard it, or the edges of it, at 5 o'clock, in the sentences the mother offers when the eldest grows bold. Papa is at his chambers. Papa's work is very important. Papa sees you at the children's hour, and that is the proper time. Papa loves you very much. All of it true, in the limited way that a drawing room sentence is true. All of it designed to close the gap rather than describe it. You do not give that answer. You say that the house is built in floors, and that each floor has its work, and that Papa's work is done in rooms that are not made for building bricks and porridge bowls. You say that the nursery is your floor and theirs, and that this is not a punishment and not a secret, only the way a house of this kind is arranged. You say that 5 o'clock is when the floors meet for a little while, and that meeting is a real meeting even when it is short. You do not say that the father would not know which stocking seam rubs. You do not say that he has never once come up the back stairs. You do not say that the mother needs the hour to be longer in the telling than it is in the clock. You give the child a map she can walk on, and you leave the rest of the country unlabeled. She is quiet for half a street. Then she wants to know whether the wooden horse is allowed downstairs. You say it is not, and she accepts this with less gravity than she gave the earlier answer about shouting, which tells you that the question about her father was the one she actually needed, and that the horse is only the walk home, settling back into itself. The first drops find you at the corner of your own road. Not a rain worth the name. A fine, undecided wet that beads on the velvet collar and darkens the brown paper along one edge. You shift the parcel under your shawl, and you shorten your step so the middle child can match it, and you do not remark on the weather, because remarking on the weather is what people do when they have run out of useful talk, and you have not. The eldest is still a half step ahead. He looks left, then right, then left again at a crossing that has nothing on it but a cat, and you let him, because the habit is the point, the side door, the back stairs, the nursery maid's face when she sees you, which is the face of a girl who has managed and is relieved to stop managing, and will not be told so in front of the children. The youngest comes at once, wooden horse abandoned, and inspects the parcel as if it might contain her. You hang the coats, you set the gaiters to dry, you put the parcel on the table where the account book was, and you do not open it yet, because opening it belongs to a later hour, and this hour is for washing the street off 3 pairs of hands and finding, before anyone downstairs thinks to ask, whether the afternoon has left any mark that will need explaining. It has not. A little wet on a collar. A question asked and answered on a pavement, where no parent was standing to hear the difference between the script and the map. You take the middle child's gloves, finger by finger, and you say nothing more about floors. She does not ask again. The rain finds the glass at last and runs, and the outing is over, and the house, which did not see you leave, does not see you come back. The rain has settled into a steady run on the glass, and the street is finished with for the day. The parcel sits unopened on the table. The coats hang. 3 pairs of hands have been washed of the afternoon, and the nursery, which looked briefly like a place of arrival, must now be made to look like a place of departure. 5 o'clock is not a time. It is a conversion. You start with the hands again, though they were washed not a quarter of an hour ago, because the drawing room will see them at a distance of 2 feet and the kitchen will not. Warm water in the basin, the nail brush. The middle child submits without comment, palms up, the way she has been taught. The youngest twists, and you hold the wrist, not unkindly, and do the work yourself. The eldest presents his hands as if they were already clean. You turn them over. They are not. Hair next. The brush the eldest will tolerate, the one with the softer bristles that lives in the left-hand drawer and is not lent. The middle child's parting, which wants to fall the other way and must not for this hour. The youngest's curls, dampened slightly so they will sit, because the mother notices curls before she notices anything else, and a good first impression at the door is worth 5 minutes of quiet on the way back up. Sashes. The Sunday sash is not for this. The everyday sash, pressed this morning, a little faded at the fold where it has been tied 100 times, will do. You tie the middle child's yourself and check the length of both ends against your thumb. The eldest can manage his own if you watch the bow. The youngest's is more decoration than use, and will be crooked again before you reach the first landing. You will straighten it there, out of sight of the hall. You rehearse the eldest while you button his cuffs. If spoken to, he may say that the walk was pleasant. He may say that he is reading the book his father gave him at Christmas, which is true enough if no one inquires how many pages. He is not to mention the shop. He is not to mention the question about floors, or the rain, or anything that happened above the first landing that the drawing room has no picture of. 2 sentences. That is the allowance. More than 2, and he will start to sound like a child who lives somewhere, and the point of the hour is not that. He nods. He has done this before. He is 7, or nearly, and he already understands that downstairs is a performance with a clock on it. The nursery maid stands by the door with the youngest's hand in hers, waiting for the nod that means she may come as far as the stair and no farther. You give it. You take the middle child yourself. The eldest goes first because he has been taught to, and because a boy of his age leading the line looks from below like a household in order. The back stairs would be faster. You do not take the back stairs. The children's hour is the one descent of the day that uses the front, and the carpet on the front stair is the one the mother chose, and arriving by the servant's route would undo the whole fiction before it started. Your own shoes make almost no sound on the runner. That is not an accident. You chose these shoes 4 years ago for exactly this quality, and you have kept the heels even. You pause on the first landing. Sash, collar, a smear on the youngest's cheek that was not there at the top of the house. You put your thumb to your tongue, which is not what any manual recommends, and is what every nurse in Kensington actually does, and the smear is gone. The middle child watches you do it and says nothing. She is learning the difference between the rules that are written and the ones that work. The drawing room door stands ajar. Light comes out that is different from nursery light, yellower, more of it, the lamps already lit though the afternoon has not quite given up. You can hear the fire, which is a better fire than yours, and a cup set down in a saucer, and the father's voice saying something you cannot catch and do not need to. You stop in the passage. This is your place. Not in the room, not gone. Present and not present. The children go through. The nursery maid has already vanished back up, as told. You remain just inside the doorframe or just outside it, depending on whether the mother glances your way, and you arrange your face into the expression that means you are available and not listening. That expression is a lie on both counts. Here is something easy to misunderstand about the children's hour, and it is misunderstood most often by people who have only read about it. The advice manuals of the last 30 years have been quite clear. A well-ordered house, they say, sets aside a portion of the late afternoon in which the children may be brought down to their parents. The hour is named as if it were 60 minutes. In the better sort of book, it is described as a sacred interval, a daily restoration of the natural bond, the time when a mother may take her proper place, and a father, home from chambers or the city, may see what he is working for. The children are to be clean, simply dressed, and on their best behavior. They are to be neither noisy nor silent. They are to have something ready to say if asked, and nothing ready if not. The nurse is to remain within call and out of the conversation. The whole arrangement is presented as the ordinary, affectionate center of family life. In actual houses, the hour is often 20 minutes, sometimes 25. In a house with guests, or a headache, or a dinner that has been put forward, it shrinks to a look-in at the nursery door and a remark about how well the youngest is growing. The manuals do not budget for that. The manuals are written for the idea of a family, not for a barrister who comes in at 4:45 with a brief still in his hand and a wife who has spent the afternoon on calls and would like for a short while to be a mother in the way the books describe, which is to say, visibly, briefly, and without having to know what the children ate or whether the middle one fought her frock. The contact the hour contains is real. It is also a kind of proof. The parents are seen to have children. The children are seen to have parents. Visitors, if there are any, are shown a household that functions as it ought. The father may ask a question about lessons and receive an answer that has been prepared 2 floors above. The mother may take the youngest on her lap for as long as the muslin of her afternoon dress will tolerate a small body, and then set her down again. Nobody is unkind. Nobody is neglectful in the sense the parish would recognize. The ritual does what it was built to do. It confirms that love, in a house of this standing, can be scheduled, dressed, and brought down the front stair at the correct time, and that this is enough. What it is for, underneath the language of bonds and restoration, is simpler. It keeps the labor of the children where it belongs, which is upstairs, and it lets the credit for the children rest where it is supposed to rest, which is in this room, on these 2 people, for the length of a short visit. You understood that in your first month in this post. You have never said it, saying it would not change the hour. It would only change whether you were still the person standing in the passage. 25 minutes today. You count them without looking at a clock, the way you count the walk to the gardens. The eldest is spoken to first, as he usually is. He offers the sentence about the book. The father nods and says the author is a sound man, which may or may not be true and is in any case not a conversation. The mother asks the middle child whether she has been good, which is a question with only one permitted answer, and receives it. The youngest is lifted, admired, set down, lifted by the father for a moment because that is what fathers of youngest children do in drawing rooms, and set down again. A porcelain figure on the side table is noticed and not touched. The fire is remarked upon. The rain against the window is remarked upon, which is, downstairs, useful talk. You file what you see, and you do not change your face. The father is tired in the way a man is tired when his work is talking and reading and the talking is not finished. He is fond. He is also slightly at a loss with the middle child, who is neither the boy nor the baby, and who stands with her hands folded the way you taught her and waits to be addressed, and is addressed second, and has nothing particular asked of her. He does not know that she will not wear the grey merino without a fight. He does not know which stocking seam rubs. He does not know that she asked 2 hours ago why he is never in the nursery, and that the answer she was given is not the one he would have scripted. He knows her name, her age, and the look of her in this dress. That is a kind of knowledge. It is not the kind that gets a child through a morning. The mother is doing the thing she does well, which is to make a short interval feel like a center. She asks about the walk. She touches the youngest's curls and finds them satisfactory. She tells the eldest he is growing, which he is, and which she would know from the last time the tailor came, even if she never came upstairs. She glances once toward the door, toward you, and the glance means, "Is this going well? And may I have a little longer? And do not look as if you are waiting." You return a face that means yes, and of course not. She needs the hour to have been longer than it was. She will remember it later as the better part of the afternoon. That memory is not a lie she tells anyone else. It is a lie the house tells her, and she has no reason to refuse it. A visitor is not expected. That helps. When there is a visitor, the children become evidence, and evidence must be more carefully arranged. Today they are only children, which is easier and also stranger because it means the performance has no audience except the people it is about, and those people are not watching it as a performance. You are the only one in the room who can see the joins. The father looks at the clock on the mantel, not rudely, only as a man looks at a clock when dinner is at 6:45 and he has not yet changed. The mother sees him look. The interval, which has already run past the point where the youngest begins to fidget, is over. No one says so. The mother says they have been delightful, which is the release word, and you step one pace into the room as if you had been summoned, though you were not in words. Collecting them is a matter of hands. The youngest comes at once, arms up, because the drawing room is interesting for a short while and then is not. The middle child makes her curtsy without being told. The eldest says good evening in the voice he uses for this floor, the one with the slightly opened vowels and the unhurried finish, and the father says good evening back, already reaching for the paper that was under his cup. You have them on the stair before the drawing room door has fully shut. The eldest's voice drops on the first landing. It is not a decision. It is a change of air. The performance register belongs below. Above the first landing, he is the boy who looked left and right for a cat, who will bargain for one more page at bedtime and lose, who does not need 2 prepared sentences because the people up here already know what kind of day it was. The middle child lets go of the banister she was holding as if it were part of her manners. The youngest puts her head against your shoulder and is, for the first time since the door opened, heavy. You do not offer, as you climb, any opinion on what you have just seen. You never do. You do not say that the father, who is a kind man and a competent one in the world that pays him, could not pick the middle child's hairbrush from a tray of 3. You do not say that the mother, who asked whether the children had been good, was asking the only question the hour has room for, and that goodness in that room means stillness and a clean sash and the absence of any news from the real day. You do not say that 25 minutes is not an hour and that the mother will need it to have been an hour and that your work, in part, is to let her. The nursery maid is waiting at the top with the door open and the lamp lit. The rain is still on the glass. The parcel is still unopened. The children go in ahead of you, already loosening, already becoming again the people this floor is built to hold. And you shut the stair behind them as if you were shutting a book you are not paid to review. The tea is already on the low table when you come through. The nursery maid has done that much without being told, which is the sort of small competence you notice and do not praise in front of the children, because praise, given too freely at this hour, loosens the rest of the evening. The jug is in its usual place. The plates are the thick nursery ones, not the downstairs china. Bread has been cut and buttered, the slices even enough to pass, and there is a seed cake after all, dark with caraway, the kitchen having decided, for reasons of its own, to be generous. You take off the sashes first. That is the rule. The drawing room version of these children comes off with the ribbon and is hung on the back of a chair, and what remains sits down to bread and milk as if the last half hour had been a story told about somebody else. The eldest swings his legs once and then remembers not to. The middle child waits to be told she may begin. The youngest is already reaching. Milk first, because milk spilled on an empty plate is simpler than milk spilled on crumbs. You pour, you set the cups down, You strap the youngest into the high chair with the same 2 motions you have used since she outgrew the last one. The bib goes on. She has jam tonight, a spoonful, because the cook sent it up with the cake, and because a child who has just been good in a room that did not belong to her is allowed a small, sticky reward that will never be mentioned below. She smears it at once, of course. It finds her cheek, then the wrist of the bib, then the underside of the spoon. You will wipe all of it before anyone else sees. Not because jam is a disgrace, because the version of this hour that travels downstairs, if it travels at all, will be a clean one. The eldest eats as he does everything he has decided is beneath discussion, steadily and without comment. The middle child butters a second slice with too much care, as if the knife were being watched. You sit at the end of the table where you can reach all 3 plates and the jug without standing. The nursery maid stands. That too is a rule, though no one wrote it down. She will eat later on the tray you send back, or she will take her bread to the window seat once the crumbs are gone. For now, she pours when the cups go down and cuts the cake when you nod, and the nod is small enough that a visitor, had there been one, would not have seen it happen. You divide the last stretch of the day while the children are still occupied, not as a conference, as 2 or 3 sentences pitched so they fall between the clink of a cup and the youngest's next demand for milk. The nursery maid will wash. You will lay the night things because the eldest has begun to notice who handles his folded shirt, and a change in that particular habit will cost you 10 minutes of bargaining you do not intend to spend. She may sit once the flannels are wrung and the cans are in place for later. Not before. She does not argue. 4 years of this house have taught her that arguing with you is not the same as arguing with the housekeeper, and that the difference is not in your favor. Here is something easy to misunderstand about a head nurse and the girl who works under her. People who have never stood in a night nursery tend to imagine the authority as borrowed. They picture you as a kind of upstairs deputy, speaking with the housekeeper's voice or the mother's, and they imagine that if you were contradicted, you would simply go down and fetch a louder one. That is not how the top floor runs. The housekeeper's voice stops at the linen cupboard and the store cupboard, and the question of how many bars of soap the nursery is allowed in a month. The mother's voice arrives at 5 o'clock and stays for 25 minutes, and is concerned with whether the children have been good. Between those 2 visits, the nursery is a household of its own, and the only authority in it is the one you carry in your tone. That tone has a great deal of work to do, and none of it is theatrical. It has to get a young woman 4 years your junior and tired in the particular way a person is tired when she has carried water since before 6, to wring flannels and lay nightgowns and not bang the cans on the turn of the stair. It has to do this without the threat of a report, because a report made too often becomes a habit, and a habit of reporting makes the nursery look badly managed. It has to do this without friendship, exactly, because friendship on this floor is a draft that lifts papers and lets gossip under the door. It also has to do this without harshness that would travel. A raised voice in the nursery is not a raised voice in the kitchen. In the kitchen, it is weather. Up here, it is an event, and events get repeated in the hall, and the hall will have you discussed before the pudding goes up. So the tone is even. It names the next task and not the character of the person who is to do it. It does not explain itself twice. It leaves a little room, just enough, for the nursery maid to be competent in ways you did not specify, because a girl who is never allowed to notice what needs doing will still be standing in the doorway when you are 40, waiting to be told about the soap. You have seen that girl in other houses. You do not intend to train her. There is another thing the tone has to accomplish, and it is less often admitted. It has to keep the nursery maid loyal to this floor rather than to the one below it. She eats, some evenings, in the servants' hall. She hears the cook's version of the house and the housekeeper's version of you. She is young enough to enjoy a story in which the head nurse is particular or proud, or too fond of the children in a way that can be made to sound unwise. If she carries nursery business down with her, the top floor stops being a household and becomes a subject. You cannot forbid her the hall. You can only make this room the place where she knows where she stands. That is a quieter kind of authority than the housekeeper's, and it has to be renewed every afternoon in the gap between the last cup and the first nightgown without ever quite declaring itself. The cake is finished. The youngest has used her fingers on the last of the jam and is regarding the result with the calm interest of a person who has not yet been taught shame about a sticky hand. You wipe her face, then the tray of the high chair, then the underside of the table where a drip has found the wood. The nursery maid takes the plates. You nod her toward the washstand cans, and she goes, and the room drops a degree of noise that you feel in your shoulders before you hear it. The eldest asks for a story. He always does, and he always asks as if the answer might be no, which it never is at this hour, because a story is cheaper than restlessness and kinder than a lecture on sitting still. The hymn book is on the shelf where you left it this morning. There is a verse they are expected to know, a short one, the sort of thing a visitor might ask to hear if a visitor ever came this far up. Which one does not? You will have them say it after the story, not before. Before makes the story feel like a reward for piety. After lets the verse do what it is actually for, which is to lower the temperature of the room and tell 3 bodies that the day is folding itself up. You do not take down the book that would impress anyone. There is a handsome volume the mother sent up at Christmas, with a gilt spine and moral tales of a type that sound well when described at a dinner table. The children will sit through it. They will not settle after it. You take, instead, the cheap edition with the softened corners, the one whose binding has learned the shape of your hand, the one that knows how long a page should be when the youngest is still in the high chair and the rain is still on the glass. It is a simple story. A cottage, a walk, a small act of kindness that does not announce itself as a lesson. You have read it enough times that you can watch their faces while your mouth does the work. The eldest pretends he is too old for it and listens with his whole head. The youngest tracks a single word, always the same word, and makes a sound when it arrives, which is her way of reading. The middle child goes still in the particular way she has when a story has got in past her manners. You keep your voice in the middle of its range. Too low, and the youngest leans out of the chair to follow it. Too bright, and the eldest decides the whole performance is for babies, and begins to swing his legs again. The fire takes a small collapse of coal while you are in the middle of a page, and nobody startles, which you file as a kind of progress no one will ask you to report. When the story ends, you close the book on your finger for a moment, then set it aside, and you have them say the verse. They know it. The eldest leads a little too quickly, as if speed were the same as mastery. The middle child's voice is accurate and thin. The youngest offers the last 2 words and is satisfied. You do not correct the eldest's rush. Correction at this point would wind the room back up, and you have spent the day getting it to this pitch. The verse hangs for a second in the air the way a well-chosen hymn does, not as theology exactly, but as a piece of furniture the evening can set a cup on. You unstrap the youngest and let her come into your lap for the 5 minutes that are hers before the washing begins. She smells of milk and jam and the wool of her frock. Her head finds the place on your shoulder it has been finding since she could hold it up. This, too, will not be described downstairs. A mother may be told that the baby was affectionate. She will not be told whose collar was damp afterward. The nursery maid comes back with the first can and sets it down without knocking it against the fender. You glance once, which is enough. She may sit now on the stool by the press, and she does with the careful gratitude of a person who has learned that sitting is not a right on this floor. The nightgowns are still in the drawer. You will get them out in a moment. For now, the room holds. The middle child has not left the table. She is lining crumbs into a small ridge with the side of her finger, and you know that ridge. It is what she builds when she has something to put down, and has not yet decided whether the floor will take the weight of it. You do not ask. Asking too soon makes her tidy the crumbs away and take the thing to bed with her, where it will turn over until the window is pale. You wait, and you keep your hand on the youngest's back, and you look at the rain instead of at her face. She says, very quietly, that she did not know where to put her feet in the drawing room. The carpet was different. She thought her shoes were too loud. She had a sentence ready, and then the lady in the silk asked her a question that was not the question the sentence was for, and she used her brother's sentence instead, and she thinks perhaps they noticed. She has, she tells you, a name she uses only in her head for that room. She will not say the name aloud. She does not need to. You understand that a private name is how a careful child makes a large space smaller. There is more. There usually is, once the first piece is down. She was afraid, she says, that her mother smiled at her as if she were a visitor, not unkindly, only as if the face had to be found and fitted before the smile could happen. She does not use those words. She says, I think she had to remember it was me. Then she looks at you to see whether that is a wicked thing to have thought. It is not wicked. You do not tell her so in a speech. You tell her that drawing rooms make everyone feel as if their shoes are too loud, and that a borrowed sentence is not a crime, and that her mother has a great many faces to keep in order, and that the remembering is not the same as forgetting. You say it in the same voice you used for the story, which is to say, a voice that does not make a commotion out of a confidence. You do not add what you know, which is that the mother has 3 children and a household, and a husband who comes home with a day's cases still in his mouth, and that 25 minutes is not long enough to pick up a person you have not carried since morning. That knowledge is yours. It is not for a child who still has to go back into that room tomorrow. She has one thing more, and she says it into the table rather than at you. It is a name. Not the private name for the room. A name she has for you, used only when the other 2 are not listening, a small invented thing that would sound foolish in any other air than this one. She has never offered it in front of the nursery maid. She does not offer it now so much as let it out, the way a person lets out a breath they have been holding on a stair. You receive it. You do not repeat it. You do not smile in a way that would make her sorry she had spoken. You smooth the ridge of crumbs flat with your thumb, which is how this floor says that a thing has been heard and will not be required to stand up in company. The youngest has gone slack against you, not asleep, only emptied of the day. The eldest has begun, without being asked, to push his chair in, which is a habit you planted 2 years ago and have not had to water this week. The nursery maid is still on the stool, hands quiet in her lap, eyes on the can as if it might move. Rain threads down the glass in the same long lines it has been using since before the walk to the gardens. The parcel from the afternoon sits unopened on the press, and it can wait. Most things that come from downstairs can wait, once the door is shut. You will not carry any of what has just been said off this floor. Not to the mother, who would be wounded by the part about remembering and would not know what to do with the wound, except to ask for more children's hours, as if minutes were the same as recognition. Not to the father, who would listen with the grave attention he gives a brief and then ask whether the child is otherwise well, which is a solicitor's question and not a useless one, and not the question that was asked of you. Not to the housekeeper, not to the hall, not to the version of the day you will give tomorrow if anyone thinks to inquire. The middle child's fear and her private name for a room that made her feet feel wrong, and the other name, the one that belongs to you, stay here, with the seed cake crumbs and the jam you already wiped from a chin no one downstairs will see. You shift the youngest carefully and nod the nursery maid toward the drawer. Night things now. The cans will be wanted before the fire burns much lower. The day is not finished. It has only come back to the place where the true record of it is kept, which is not a book and not a report and not the account you will ever give at the drawing room door. The nursery maid has the drawer open before you have finished shifting the youngest onto your other arm. Nightgowns come out in the order you laid them this morning, the smallest on top, the eldest's at the bottom, each one aired on the nursery fender for a quarter of an hour so the flannel will not meet a child's skin cold. You tip your head toward the landing, the cans. She understands without the sentence being finished and goes. It is Friday. In the calendar you keep and do not write down. Fridays and Tuesdays are bath nights, unless a child has been poorly, in which case you add an evening or take one away and mention it to no one. The mother likes a rule she can picture from the drawing room. You like a child who is clean enough and not chilled. The two preferences are not always the same preference, and only one of them has to live on this floor. The hip bath lives on its side in the night nursery cupboard. Zinc, a little scarred along the rim where it has been tipped against the door frame too many times in 4 years. You take it down yourself. The nursery maid is already on the stairs. You set the screen, a hinged thing of faded cretonne, tall enough to hide a sitting child from the door. No one from downstairs is likely to walk in without knocking. The screen is not really for them. It is part of how this floor keeps its own weather, a small piece of order that belongs to the work and not to the house's idea of the work. The fire has enough in it to take the edge off the room. You add a small lump and set the guard back. 3 children, 1 bath, water that will not stay hot. The sequence is as fixed as the order of their stockings. Footsteps on the back stair, slower than they were this morning because a full can will not be hurried on the turn. The first one arrives, then the second. Steam lifts off the zinc as you pour. A third can, cooler to bring the heat down to what a wrist will accept. You test it the way you have tested it since the first week in this post, not by guess and not by the kitchen's idea of hot, which runs a little fierce for small skin. The youngest is unbuttoned and lifted in while the water still holds its warmth. Face, neck, ears, the quick, practical pass with the flannel that you have done so many times, the motion has no thought left in it. Out, wrapped, given to the maid to dry before the fire. A kettle's worth from the 4th can goes in to lift the temperature for the middle child. The same pass, the same wrap, the same handing over. By the time the eldest steps in, the water is what it is. You do not apologize for that. The eldest is old enough to tolerate it and young enough not to be invited to comment. This is the hour when the house's arrangement of rooms becomes most obvious and most expensive and least often described by the people who paid for it. A well-off Kensington house in 1886 does not put its children to sleep in the room where they have spent the day. The day nursery is the front room on this floor, the one with the better light, the low table, the toy cupboard, the drugget that takes the wear of boots and dropped slates. Breakfast happened there. The hymn and the counting beads happened there. The jam that you wiped from a chin happened there. The night nursery is the back room, smaller, plainer. The beds set out with a space between them that you can walk without catching a shin. The nurse's own door opening directly off it so that a cough or a call does not have to cross a landing to reach you. The split is written into the advice the mother would have been given when the household was set up. Sleeping air should not be the same air a child has been breathing since morning. A room that has held meals and lessons and the small weather of 3 people at play is not, according to the manuals, a fit room to sleep in. Carbonic acid, spent air, the unwholesome closeness of a day used up. Whether the science would still be put that way is not your concern. The rooms are the rooms. You keep both of them. What the manuals do not budget for, or budget for only as a line that says coals and soap, is the labor of treating 2 rooms as if they were one child's world. 2 fires, 2 sets of windows to be opened and shut according to a theory of ventilation you apply more carefully than anyone downstairs will ever check. 2 floors to be swept, 2 sets of ashes, the constant carrying of things from the room where they were used to the room where they are wanted next. You have been moving between these two doors since before 6 this morning. The children experience it as the natural shape of a day. The parents experience it as the house being properly appointed. You experience it as the distance between a can of hot water and a bed. Hot water to this floor is still, in this house, a matter of arms. The range downstairs will send a pipe as far as the bedroom floor on a good day, and there is a proper bath there for the people who sleep on that landing. The nursery floor sits above that arrangement and has not been included in it. Cans, then. Copper or zinc, a wooden handle that wears a groove into a palm if the same girl carries them for a year. A can that holds 2 gallons weighs, when it is full, something close to 20 pounds, and the back stair of a tall stucco house in Kensington does not rise in a generous line. There is a turn. There is a narrow place where the can must be shifted to the other hand or set down for a breath. 5 cans of hot and 2 of cold on a bath night is 100 pounds of water walked up from the kitchen, and then the used water walked down again in the slop pail, because what has been carried up does not vanish when the children are clean. The kitchen maid heated it, the nursery maid carried it, you poured it, tested it, used it, and will account for the soap. None of that weight appears in the household book under a heading that would tell the truth. Coals, soap, sundries. The turn of the stair does not have a line. You have felt the can yourself on mornings when the maid was behind and the fire would not wait. The pull in the shoulder is particular. It is not the same as a market basket and not the same as a child on the hip. It is a dead, shifting pull that wants to knock against the banister and will scald if it tips. Girls leave posts over less. This one has not left. You notice that, and you do not say it, because praise of that kind, given at the wrong volume, becomes a thing the hall can use. The eldest is out of the bath. The maid tips the zinc toward the pail with the care of someone who has already carried too much today and would rather not add a flood to the list. You take the nightgown from the fender, flannel, a little thin at the cuffs where last winter's growth was let down and the fabric did not quite forgive the needle. The middle child's is newer. The youngest's is a cut down, and if the mother ever looked closely, she would see the line where a larger garment used to end. She will not look closely. Newly dressed is a phrase that works best from a distance. Day clothes come off the chair in the reverse of this morning's order. Combinations folded, not stuffed. Petticoats shaken and laid flat. The boots paired and set under the press. The button hook returned to the same hook it left at first light. The Sunday collar, which was not wanted today, stays in its paper. You do this while the maid wrings the flannels and hangs them where they will dry by morning. 4 hands, 2 rooms, the small, satisfying click of a household putting itself away. No one will see the click. That is the point of it. Prayers at the bed rail, in the order the household expects. The youngest first, because the youngest will not last if you leave them until last. Kneeling is a short business at that age. The prayer is the one they have said since they had words enough to approximate it, and you supply the middle of the line when it frays, which it does, in the same place, most nights. The middle child is next, more careful, the voice kept small, because the day nursery still holds a little of the afternoon's unsettled air, and this room is supposed to be the quieter one. The eldest knows the whole of it, and a verse besides, and offers the verse without being asked, which is a kind of showing off you allow at this hour because it costs nothing and sends them to bed feeling older than they are. You say amen in the tone that means the rail may be released now. The household would recognize the shape of this. They would not recognize how much of it is timing, and how much of it is the particular tiredness of Friday, and how much of it is you deciding that tonight the verse is a gift and not a test. The youngest goes down easily. A blanket shifted, a hand on the forehead that is not checking for heat so much as finishing the sentence the bath began. Sleep takes them the way it has taken them since they were small enough to live almost entirely in your arms. You wait until the breathing lengthens, because leaving too soon will only bring you back. The middle child wants the curtain an inch more open than last night, and an inch less open than the night before. You settle it at the inch you have already chosen, which happens to be the one that keeps the street lamp off the pillow and the air moving. A look that might have become a protest decides not to. The private name from an hour ago is not repeated. It does not need to be. You are still here, and the room is still this room, and the drawing room is a floor that cannot be seen from this bed. That is enough for now. The eldest bargains. This is as regular as the bath night itself. One more page. The book is the one from after tea, still open on the chair, with the place held by your thumb before you set it down. You invented the rule years ago in the first winter when an open-ended bargain kept the whole floor awake and the morning came too fast for everyone. The eldest may ask once. The answer is no. If they do not ask a second time, you sometimes turn the page anyway, later, when the others are under, and read the page to the dark as if it were a kindness you had planned. Tonight, they ask once. You close the book. They accept it with the particular dignity of a child who has tested a fence and found it where it was yesterday. The lamp on their side of the room goes down to a bead. You will put it out entirely when you come back through. You are at the door when the youngest makes the small sound that is not a cry and not a word. You go back. A hand finds your sleeve in the dim and holds it with the simple authority of a person who has not yet been taught that some requests are inconvenient. Stay. Not a long speech, not even the word "some nights," only the hand and the face turned toward the place where you are. You sit. The chair by this bed is the one you sit in when a child is cutting a tooth or a dream has gone wrong or the rain has made the room feel larger than it is. Tonight, it is only the ordinary wish, the one that has nothing the matter with it and everything the matter with what it would mean downstairs. Stay, meaning you, meaning the person who has been the temperature of this room since before they had language for rooms, not mother. Mother is a dress and a scent and 25 minutes after 5 o'clock, and a kiss that is real and also brief. You are the one who is here at the end of the water and the flannel and the prayer, and the youngest's body knows that in the way, a body knows the way down a stair in the dark. You answer the request. Of course you do. A few minutes, the sleeve still held, your other hand finding the edge of the blanket and settling it. The breathing lengthens again. The hand loosens. You wait until it has loosened completely, because getting up at the first slack is a false economy and will cost you the return trip. You will not carry the fact downstairs, not tomorrow at any hour, and not in the pleasant, careful sentences you keep for the drawing room door. The mother would hear it as a sweetness she wanted more of, or as a small failure in the children's hour, or as a thing that needed to be fixed with a longer visit and a different book. She would not be wrong to want her child. She would be wrong about the lever. The father would hear it as a piece of nursery colour, nod, and ask whether the child is sleeping through, which is a reasonable question, and not the one the hand on the sleeve was asking. The house cannot afford the plain version, which is that a child of this age loves the person who is actually present at the falling asleep, and that person is paid £30 a year and sleeps on the other side of a door that does not lock against a call. The night nursery settles. 3 sets of breath, not yet quite in time with each other, and the fire making the small, ticking sound of a coal that has found a better way to fall apart. The screen is folded back against the cupboard. The hip bath has gone to its side again. The flannels hang. In the day nursery, through the open door, the low table is cleared and the chairs are pushed in, and the room looks, already, like a place that has not been used, which is the effect you work for and will work for again at first light. You put the eldest's lamp out on your way past. The window catch gets a press from your thumb, the same press as every night, the one that tells you it has not slipped. A blanket on the middle bed has crept. You shift it. The guard is where it should be. The landing is darker than the room you are leaving. Somewhere below, the house is still going about the kind of evening that has wine in it, or at least conversation, and does not require a can of water to be walked up 4 flights before a child can be put to bed. That evening is not yours. The next hour might be if you take it. The fire in the night nursery will do for a while yet. The mending from midday is still in the basket. A cheap edition waits under the lamp in your own room, the page turned down from last night. You close the nursery door until it meets the frame without a click. The true record of the day is on this side of it, breathing, and will not be required to explain itself to anyone. The landing takes your weight the way it always does after the door is shut, as if the boards themselves had been waiting for the house to drop a note. Below you, the evening has a different temperature. Voices reach the stairwell only as a kind of weather, a rise and fall that does not include your name. A door closes on the ground floor. Someone laughs once, and then the laugh is folded back into conversation. Your hand stays on the nursery latch for a count of 3, long enough to be sure no one has stirred, and then you let it go. Your own room is the width of a good cupboard and a little longer than a bed. The ceiling slopes. The window looks onto the backs of other houses, not the square. The fire in the night nursery can be left. One coal still works at itself behind the guard. You leave the connecting door an inch ajar, the inch that lets a cough or a change in breathing reach you without making the children feel watched. The lamp glass is smoked at the top from too many evenings of the same. You light it. The flame settles. On the table, the cheap edition lies where you left it, and beside it, the mending you did not finish at midday. A stocking with a heel gone. The needle waits in the collar of the work. For a minute, you do nothing with any of it. The house has dropped a register below you, and the drop is a kind of permission. This hour is yours if you take it, and taking it is a decision you make every night as if it were new. You could go down. The servants' hall will still be lit. The cook will have her feet nearer the fender than anyone else is allowed. There will be tea or the end of a pot, and talk that runs in the same channels it ran last week. A chair would be given to you. It would not be the chair nearest the fire. Someone would ask after the children in the voice people use for children they do not have to wash, and you would answer in the voice you use for downstairs, shorter than the one used above the first landing, longer than silence. You do not go down every night. You do not stay away every night either. Either choice marks you, and you have known that since the first month in this post. Appear too often, and they will say, not quite to your face, that the nurse thinks herself one of them when she is not. Stay away, and they will say she thinks herself above the hall, which is a different sentence with the same temperature. You are not family, and you are not hall. The half place you occupy in daylight does not dissolve after dark. It only grows quieter, which makes the edges easier to feel. Tonight, you stay. The decision costs nothing and changes nothing and is still, in the small economy of the top floor, the only thing that is entirely yours before morning. You sit. The chair complains in the same place it always does. The basket comes toward your knees, the stocking first because the book will wait and the heel will not, and because your hands prefer a task they can finish. The wool is the children's wool, navy, already on its second life. You turn the heel and graft the new stitches onto the old. £30 a year, all found. That is the figure the mother named when she engaged you, and it is the figure that has not moved in 4 years. All found means your bed, your board, the soap, the candle, the black dress you are expected to be seen in on the stair. It does not mean the postal orders you send home at the quarter. It does not mean the book on the table which cost you a shilling you mentioned to no one. The nursery maid has £16 and her attic and the same arrangement, and she is 4 years younger, and she will not stay at 16 if she can help it. In her place, you would not either. Here is something easy to misunderstand about a wage like yours. Household books from houses of this sort put a head nurse somewhere between the cook and the upper housemaid in the wage column, and nowhere at all among the things the household believes it cannot do without. £30 is more than a milliner's assistant sees in a year and less than a governess of any pretension will accept. It is enough to live on if you live here. It is not enough to stop living here. What you can put by depends on who is waiting at the other end of the postal order. Some nurses save £2 or £3 in a year in a post office book with a brown cover and speak of it to no one. Some send every spare shilling home. You have done both in different seasons. The book in the chest has a balance that would not keep you 3 months if this house closed its door tomorrow. You know the figure the way you know the window catch, by touch, without needing to look. Then there is the end of the post, which no one discusses when they engage you and everyone understands. The youngest is not yet of school age. When that year comes, and it will come, the nursery as it stands now will be taken apart, and you will be given a month, perhaps 2, if the mother is kindly in the way that costs her little, and a written character on the morning room paper, folded once. The character is the real wage at the finish. Without it, the registry offices will not put your name forward. With it, you can take another post in another tall house if there is one. A pension almost never appears. You have heard of one, told on the benches in the gardens as people tell of weather that does not come twice. A nurse of 20 years, a small annual sum, a room kept on when the last boy went to school. Most nurses move. Most nurses move again. The work is the same work in a different square. The character gets a new date. The cheap edition comes with you because it is yours. The finished heel sits against your palm. It will do. You bite the wool, tuck the needle back into the collar of the work, and leave the basket on the floor. The lamp wants trimming. You trim it. The cheap edition is a yellowback, a novel you would not leave on the nursery table and would not name if the housekeeper asked what you read. It is not improving. It is a story about people who have more rooms than they need and say more than they mean, and you are not paid to have opinions about either of those things, and you have them anyway. You open to the turned down page and do not read, not yet. The thoughts that arrive at this hour are not the thoughts the post requires. In the day you think in lists, in the temperature of basins, in the particular cry that means a stocking seam and not a real hurt. At night, with the children on the other side of an inch of door, the lines get longer. There is a life this house has no picture of. A sister, a street you could walk without measuring it to the minute. A Sunday that did not begin with a collar. They are only thoughts, and this house has nowhere for them to be said. The servants' hall would make a joke of them, or a silence. The drawing room does not know you have a mind that works when the children are asleep. The children themselves are too near, and too much yours, to be told that you are also a person who will have to leave them. The book rests open on your knee. The wall above the washstand is a wall you have looked at for 4 years, and it has never looked back. The inventory starts itself. It always does. Once the mending is down and the lamp is trimmed, and there is no one left to dress or correct or carry. What you have not told them would fill a longer book than the one in your lap, and it is not written anywhere. You have not told them which child sleeps nearest the edge and which one wakes if the window rattles. You have not told them that the eldest's reading voice in the drawing room is not the voice used on the slate, and that the difference is not laziness, but a kind of sense, a knowledge of what each room wants. You have not told them about the bowl sent back this morning, or the cook's face in the doorway, or the pudding you conceded so that tomorrow's gravy would not become a quarrel. You have not told them what was said on the bench about houses that look finer than they pay, or why you steered the perambulator past a particular pair of people, or what the middle child confessed over nursery tea and asked you, without asking, to keep. You have not told them that the father does not know the middle child's small habits, and that the mother needs the children's hour to have been longer than it was, and that you will go on letting her need that. You have not told them about the postal order, or the brown book, or the sister. You have not told them what you earn in any way that would sit beside what the father earns and still make sense. You have not told them that you are already writing in some part of your mind the character you will need when the youngest is old enough. turning the sentences so they praise the house as much as they describe you. All of it is held the way you hold a mended seam. Tight. Invisible if you have done it properly. Load-bearing in a way that only shows if it fails. The parents will never run a thumb along the inside of the day and find the stitches. That is the point of the work. You are supposed to be the person who was simply there while the hours happened. This hour is the hour in which you know otherwise and do not say so. You turn a page you have not read. The story waits. Below you, the house goes on with its evening. You are still here. The lamp is still burning. For a little while longer, you are allowed to be a woman in a chair with a story in her lap, and not a function of the top floor, and not a name on a wage column, and not the closed door the parents will pass on their way to bed without quite knowing what they are passing. You begin to read. When you close the book, the lamp has burned lower than you expected. The cheap edition lies in your lap with one page still turned down, not because you mean to keep the place, but because your hand found the corner the way it finds most corners at the end of a day, out of habit. You sit a moment longer. The story is finished. The chair is still the same chair. Below you, a door on the first floor closes with the particular softness of people who believe the upper floors have already given themselves to the night. You stand. The chair makes a small complaint against the boards. You take the lamp. The night nursery is 2 steps and a door from where you have been sitting. You know the catch of that door in the dark, the little lift it needs before it will swing without a voice. You open it only wide enough to pass. The hinge, for once, agrees to be quiet. Inside, the room is the color of banked coal and the thin reach of the lamp in your hand. The guard stands where you set it. You test the rail with the side of your hand. Not because you doubt the work, but because this is the last thing you do, and the last thing you do is always the same. The fire is low and even. It will last until morning if the night is not an unusually hard one. You banked it yourself. You know the weight of the coal you left and the draft of this particular chimney in a week like this one, when the square outside has already begun to smell of wet leaves and distant smoke. The window is next, without your having to decide that it is next. 4 years have worn a path from the grate to the sash that your feet could walk if the lamp went out. The sash is down. The catch is home. The curtain hangs as you left it, a narrow strip of dark glass showing at the edge, enough air and not enough weather. Beyond the glass, Kensington is a row of other tall houses and a street that has mostly finished with itself. A cab somewhere. A late pair of boots on stone. Nothing that has any claim on this room. The youngest lies nearest the wall. You stand long enough to hear the breathing, which is even, and to see the blanket, which has worked itself toward the foot of the bed in the way this child has worked a blanket since the first winter you were here. You draw it up. You do not tuck it in a fashion that would wake anyone. The middle child has not moved. One hand folded under the cheek, the mouth slightly open, the face emptied of the private weather it carries in the day. The eldest has an arm out over the coverlet, the way the eldest sleeps when the day has been, on balance, a day that can be put down. You leave the arm. There is a point past which arranging a sleeping child becomes a kind of vanity, and you passed that point a long time ago. You remain in the middle of the boards for a span that is not quite a count. 3 bodies. The air still holds a ghost of soap and wool and the dry heat of a room that has had a fire in it since before 6. This is the room you will leave, and this is the room you will enter again before the kitchen range is fully lit. And between those 2 crossings, the children will belong to no one but their own sleep. You go out. The door shuts as quietly as it opened. You are back in the day nursery, which at this hour is only a room with a dying fire and a lamp and a chair that still holds the shape of you. 4 years, you do not, as a rule, stand still and add them up. Tonight the adding happens without your asking it to. You could count the years in winters, or in the sizes of boots written down and then crossed through, or in the half note the eldest's voice has dropped since last spring. You could count them in the number of times you have stood in this exact spot with a lamp and listened, and found the listening enough. Speech first, not the recitation the drawing room is offered at 5 o'clock, polished and brief and designed to travel the length of a carpet, the real speech. The middle child's habit of starting a sentence twice and abandoning the first attempt as if it had never been tried. The youngest's private words for ordinary objects, which you understood before anyone downstairs had noticed that private words were being coined at all. The eldest learning to drop a voice in a shop and pick it up again on the stair, because you taught the difference without ever giving the lesson a name. You did not invent language for them. You were the person in the room while language arrived. You answered it. You corrected it. You did not laugh at the wrong moments. That is most of what teaching a child to talk actually is, and it does not appear in anyone's report of a day. Sleep, the order of the beds, the story that settles them, and the story that winds them tighter, which are not the same story, and which you learned by wasting evenings on the wrong one until the right one declared itself. The lamp turned down at the same point in the same prayer, because children will bargain with ritual if ritual is allowed to wander, and you decided years ago that this particular ritual would not wander. 4 years of nights like this one. The catch, the blanket, the breathing. The parents have a theory of rest gathered from manuals and from what other mothers say over teacups. You have a practice of it. The practice is what has kept this floor quiet. Manners of the kind that do not show until they fail. Waiting for a bowl, walking on the inside of a pavement, offering a good morning to a cook who may or may not answer, and offering it again the next day because the offering is the lesson and the answer is not. You have built those manners in small, unremarkable repetitions, the same correction given without heat, the same expectation held until it hardened into habit. If the children are praised for them at a table you will never sit at, the praise will not mention you. That has not been a surprise for a long time. It was not a surprise the first time. Courage, of a daily sort, which is the only sort most childhoods actually require. The walk after a fall, taken at the ordinary pace, as if the fall had been a stone in the path and not a story. The dark of this room when the fire was new and the shadows were still being learned. A dog in the gardens that was larger than a dog that size has any right to be. You were the person who did not make a fuss, and so they learned not to make a fuss, and that lesson will look, later, like temperament. People are fond of temperament. It saves them from having to name the work that produced it. Taste even, which is a strange word to use of a nursery and an accurate one. What they will eat without a battle, what they will wear without a fight, which book they will listen to and which they will only endure and which hairbrush they will tolerate on a difficult morning. You keep a map of all of it that has never been asked for and never written down. The mother's map is the one that travels in letters to relations. The children are coming along nicely. They have their father's look about the eyes. They enjoyed the gardens. Your map is the one that gets them dressed and fed and out the door and home again without a scene that would have to be explained. Both maps describe the same 3 people. Only one of them is used, the daily weather of 3 children. That is the phrase that sits closest to the truth, not the climate, the weather. The morning that will take a firm hand and the morning that will take a joke, the hour when the middle child goes inward and should not be pulled back by force. The look the eldest gets when a question is forming that you would rather field here on this floor than let travel downstairs in its first raw shape. You have stood in that weather for 4 years. Your hands have made it livable. The house prefers a different story in which children simply grow, the way plants do if the window is large enough. You have another story. You have never told it. You will not start tonight. The parents will take the credit as if it were natural. That is not because they are unkind. It is because the house is built that way, and houses of this kind have been built that way for longer than anyone in them has been alive. A barrister of some standing, has children who speak well and sleep through the night and walk in Kensington Gardens without disgracing the square. The explanation that presents itself in a dining room, in a letter, in the mind of a man who sees those children for a short practiced interval at the end of a working day, is that the children are well bred and that the mother has a gift and that the nurse is satisfactory. Satisfactory is the word that will appear if a word appears at all. It is a small word. It is meant to be. It fits in a margin. It does not require anyone to look up from a brief. A change in this household would erase you with a month's wages and a letter of character. You have always known the arithmetic. If the father took a post in another city, if the lease were given up, if the youngest grew old enough for school and the nursery were closed the way nurseries are closed, you would pack a box and walk down the same back stairs you have walked since the year you came, and the rooms would be turned out, and another woman in another tall house would put a match to another grate before 6. The children would write, perhaps, for a little while, then they would not. That is not hardness in them. That is how children are, and how houses are, and how posts end. The letter of character would be warm enough. It would say you were reliable and fond of the children, and sober in your habits, and that you left of your own accord. It would not say that you taught the eldest to read a cook's face in a doorway. It would not say that you kept inside these walls a thing the middle child once said about the drawing room. It would not say that you were the person who knew every morning which stocking seam would rub and which frock would start a war that was not worth fighting. £30 a year, all found across 4 years, is £120 of a life converted into other people's children. You have sent a portion of it out of this house. You have kept a portion. You will carry a character that can travel. You will not carry a pension. Almost no one in your position does. The manuals that tell a mother how to choose a nurse are silent on what the nurse is to do when the choosing is over and the youngest has gone down the stair for the last time in your care. That silence is not an accident of authorship. It is the shape of the work, written out as an absence. This is not a criticism of the woman in the drawing room. She was raised inside the same arrangement you serve. She was taught that a good mother loves her children and that a good house runs, and she has done both of those things according to the rules she was given. She comes up when she is sent for. She asks the questions she knows how to ask. She believes, because the house has been arranged so that she can believe it, that the daily making of these 3 people is a kind of weather that happens around her, like the light on the landing, like the coal in the cellar, like the cook's rising at an hour she has never had to name. She is not a fool. She is a woman standing inside a structure that cannot afford to let her see the labor clearly. If she saw it clearly, she would have to call it labor. If she called it labor, the whole familiar fiction of the nursery, the storybook nurse, the children as a natural crop, the top floor as a place that simply hums along, would have to be rewritten. No one on this street is in the business of rewriting that. The house needs you. The house cannot afford to see you clearly. Both of those things are true at the same time, and they have been true since the morning you arrived with your box and your references and were shown the top floor as if it were a small country you would now be expected to govern without quite being a citizen of it. You set the lamp down. There is still the small work of leaving a room so that morning will not have to invent itself. The wool goes back in the press. Outdoor things, indoor things. The gaiters that were damp at midday and are only cool now. The extra shawl you did not need. You fold as you have always folded, edges even, the pile stacked in the order you will want it when the room is still dark and your hands are doing this again. A press that is in order is a sentence you write to the woman you will be at 5:45. You have been writing that sentence for 4 years. No one else reads it. You bank what is left of the day nursery fire. The coals settle with a sound so familiar it has stopped being a sound and become a kind of silence with a grain to it. The guard is set. The fender is clear. In the morning, this room will look as if it had arranged itself. The low table will be waiting. The slates will be on the shelf. The chairs will stand where chairs are supposed to stand. A stranger walking in at breakfast would not be able to say what had been done here between dusk and dawn, or by whom. That is the highest compliment the work can be paid. It is also the way the work disappears. The night nursery door is shut. Behind it, the three of them are still the three of them, breathing as you left them, held for these hours by nothing but sleep. You will hear them if they need you. You always have. The boards between your bed and theirs are a distance you could cross without opening your eyes. Your own room is the small one off that door. The bed is narrow. The jug on the washstand holds the water you carried up earlier, and it will be cold now, which is as it should be. You do not light another lamp. There is a little left from the passage, and then there is not. And then there is only the dark you have taken a dress off in 1,000 times. Hairpins in the saucer. The print hanging on the chair back. The wool you sleep in, which is not a wool anyone downstairs will ever have cause to notice. You lie down. The mattress has your shape already. The house, below and around, has reached the register it will hold until the first sounds come up from the kitchen, a long time from now. The fire in the other room ticks, slowly, and then more slowly. A sash settles in its frame. The press is shut. The door is shut. At breakfast, the nursery will look as if it had arranged itself, and the day will begin again as if days simply arrived, the way weather does, without anyone having stayed behind to make the arrival possible. You close your eyes on that room, and on the one beyond it, and on the house that needs you, and does not see you, and will be, for a few more hours, perfectly still.